Chapter 181, The Wicked Will Be Dealt With by the Wicked. The superiors of the research institution were very angry. They felt like the man had thought them foolish monkeys, but the liar had walked into their trap. How dare he come to mess with us without knowing who owns this territory? In the exhibition room, Kate calmly backed off, adjusted his clothes, and looked at Han Xiao haughtily. If you move, such as wanting to capture me as a hostage, you will be turned into a pool of blood, so don't have any ideas of taking the risk. Just put down the gun and surrender, you can still live. Han Xiao looked up at the dark black guns. The cameras were in the corners of the room, and the high-ranked officials were looking at him through those. He even knew that the vents could release poisonous gas. With a cold expression, he issued a voice command. Launch program. The smart chip in the mechanical suit immediately recognized the command and connected to the standby computer. It then entered the research institution's intranet and activated the hacking program planted by Han Xiao the previous night. The research institution's system fell like dominoes in the face of the hacking program. Without much effort, the entire authority system was overwritten, and Han Xiao gained control in a few seconds. This was not a last-minute simple hacking program that Han Xiao had created. He had created many smart chips, and to prevent losing their control to someone else, he had also made some anti-attack programs as well as some invasive programs, but he had not had the chance to use them before. The tactical hologram screen showed the terrain map of the research institution. Han Xiao issued another voice command. The walls of the exhibition room reopened, and the showcases appeared again. The guns on the ceiling slid back, and the doors opened. When he invaded the research institution system yesterday, he had already seen the structure of it, and he knew the security measures clearly. There are some tightly guarded warehouses in the research institution with a high amount of drug inventories, but it was much more than he could carry. The amount in the exhibition room was just right. The sudden turning of tables left the high-ranked officials of the research institution horrified. What happened? The system has lost control. Quick, take back the control. The technician at the side was sweating all over. He smashed the keyboard rapidly, and lines of code kept appearing. Suddenly, his screen turned green, and the computer froze. The technician exclaimed, I can't. The invasion speed of his program is too fast, it's impossible to solve it in a short time. He was ready yesterday. The high-ranked officials were filled with hatred. In the exhibition room, Kate was stunned. He looked into the Han Xiao's black goggles, and fear gnawed at his heart. His legs softened, and he fell to the ground. Aye! Bang! Smoke rose from the ground between his legs where the bullet had hit. Kate was extremely afraid, not even daring to move. Stay there and don't move. You can still live, Han Xiao said in a mocking tone. Oh okay, calm down, Kate replied hastily as cold sweat wet his entire back. He could only sit there and tremble. Han Xiao broke open all the showcase cabinets. The enhancement from the mechanical suit made his punches stronger than bullets. He took out his backpack and put all the vials inside. Soon, his backpack was full. He patted his bag with satisfaction. It was a huge amount of rewards. At the start, he had no intention of robbing the research institution. However, that changed when he accidentally overheard Kate and the high-ranked official talking about Yang Dian and Ned. Since the research institution was not one with morals, Han Xiao did not bother to do things the nice way. They neither were good people anyways, so they might as well follow the rules of the wicked. Whoever was stronger had the right to take from the weaker side. If the opposite party had reliable morals and beliefs, Han Xiao would not mind interacting with them normally, but if they made Han Xiao unhappy and were not strong enough, Han Xiao would go back to his old habits when he was a player, robbing whatever he saw. Furthermore, he was very interested in the research institution's drugs. He actually liked to convince people with his virtues, but if that did not work out, he would then fight them instead. Although Han Xiao did not like the idea of sacrificing oneself for the sake of others and wasn't like those superheroes who had a great love for the entire world, he still liked people who were kind. Befriending a kind person was definitely better than befriending an evil person. Even those who were evil would rather befriend those who were kind. It was safe and worry-free. Unfortunately, the number of kind people in the world was dwindling. No one could tell if a smile had ulterior motives behind it or which brother seemed to be loyal on the surface but talked bad about them behind their back. Betrayal was common, even between old friends. Kind people were such rare animals that they could even be placed in the zoo as an exhibit. Zoo might not be the best term, newsfeed would be a better description. The research institution toyed with the heroes, and it was because of these snobby hypocrites that kind people became fewer, society became harder to survive in, and spiritual traditions collapsed entirely. Very often, one's perseverance in others' eyes was just the minimum of what one should do. One's hard work was just a way of gaining more profit. Just like how the Lewis Research Institution used the passion of Yang Dian and Ned, Han Xiao robbed the research institution's hard work. An old saying appeared in Han Xiao's mind. Karma will find its way. Wickedness will be dealt with by the wicked. Looks like I've become wicked. Han Xiao laughed. An opportunity to do bad things without feeling guilty did not come by often. Why would he spend money on someone he could rob from? He could just change his face and become a new customer anyway. It was not the time to check through his rewards. He picked up his backpack and walked toward the lift. Kate's body was still soft. He let out a sigh of relief as he saw Han Xiao leaving, but the fear was still lingering in his mind. The high-ranked officials in the surveillance room were bleeding in their hearts when they saw all the drugs being taken. One of them yelled in anger, "Quickly, somebody think about how we can salvage this shit show." "I got it. Ask the switchboard room to cut off all electricity in the basement and trap him in there. Immediately seek help from Maple. We still have some guards. Gather them all at the main gate. We just have to stall him for 15 minutes until the military force arrives, and I want him to be demolished then." As Han Xiao arrived at the lift, the entire floor's lights turned off. He raised his eyebrows and switched to night vision. Cutting off the power, as expected. Han Xiao's legs bent as the power from nanotechnology muscle fiber gathered in his legs and burst in an instant. The floor cracked open, and he shot through the ceiling like a rocket. After 2 jumps, Han Xiao bumped straight into the hall. A group of guards who were gathering came into his sights. There were only some 20 of them, not even 1/5 of the research institution's guards. Han Xiao's way of going up the floors was way too swift and violent. It didn't give much time for the research institution to react. The high-ranked officials were shocked by the power of the mechanical suit. They hurriedly ordered the guards to attack. "Stall the enemy. The rest of the guards will be here in less than 20 seconds, F***CK. Before he could even finish giving the order, Han Xiao bumped through the guards like a bowling ball hitting a strike and sent them flying. The guards could not even slow him down as he broke through the glass door and disappeared in the streets. The people there could only catch the hints of a black shadow. The high-ranked officials of the research institution were raging with anger. They were hopeful that the guards could at least stall him for 15 minutes, but they barely could for 3 seconds. Seeing that their hard-stolen drugs could not be retrieved any time soon, the superiors' hearts were bleeding, and they were furious. When will the Maple military arrive? At least 10 minutes. That's too long. That asshole would have been long gone. Is there any other way? Kate had returned to normal and immediately said, "The superhero duo is still in the city. I will contact them now. Hurry up." Chapter 182, Shaken. Translator, Atlas Studios Editor, Atlas Studios. Yang Dian received a phone call from Kate. Confused, he asked, "Mr. Kate, are you looking for us?" Kate sounded anxious. "A robber has taken the products of the research institution, including the oppressor for the death virus. If we can't retrieve it, our results will be lost. Since the military can't make it in time, we have to count on you guys." The duo turned serious. "We will definitely help." "That's great. You're our only hope. I'll send you the coordinates." "The enemy is a man wearing a black mechanical suit." "Black mechanical suit?" Yang Dian and Ned's expressions changed. Could it be him? Running on the street wearing a mechanical suit was too flashy. As soon as Han Xiao left the research institution, he climbed onto the rooftop of a building and continued running across rooftops. That way, even if someone saw him, it would not cause as great an impact. He was planning to find a hidden spot to take off the mechanical suit and change to a different face. "So many drug potions, enough for me to drink it like water." Han Xiao laughed. After turning into a few streets, Han Xiao jumped into an empty alley. It was at this moment that 2 strong vital signs showed up on the radar, and after the automated search in the database, it surprisingly had a match. It turned out to be the 2 superheroes that he had met twice. "They're chasing me?" Han Xiao thought for a while, and he knew that they were being toyed with by Lewis Research Institution again. This time, A notice popped up on the interface. You have triggered mission trial of a hero. Mission introduction: heroes of justice are never in short supply, but who really gets to decide what justice is in the end? Some people become depraved and give up their initial goals, some lose their adherence and become what they swore to fight against, some are used and lied to. Choosing justice is a tough path, and you can be the trial that helps these heroes define what justice really means to them. Maybe, wake them up a little while you're at it. Mission requirements: defeat Yang Dian and Ned, and expose the truth about Lewis Research Institution. Rewards: random. Han Xiao narrowed his eyes. He was quite interested in this mission. It was a chance for him to feel what it was like to be the ultimate evil. Han Xiao analyzed the data. I've got a few minutes to kill, just enough time to play with them a little. Han Xiao stopped in place and waited. Yang Dian and Ned's figures flashed past the alley entrance not long after they ran too far. After a few seconds, the duo realized and immediately turned back, standing at the alley entrance with a confronting stance. It really is you. Yang Dian's face was stern. He had seen the power of this mysterious warrior in the mechanical suit with his own eyes. Even in his peak state, he would probably be beaten in a few punches, and he was now injured. But the thought of Han Xiao robbing the cure to the death virus encouraged him to not back up even if he could not win. Ned rubbed his hands and was ready to strike. He said in a low tone, even though you saved us before, I'm afraid we can't let you take the cure. Cure? Damn, these guys really are the type that are stupid enough to help someone who cheated them. Ned struck first. His hand slapped forward, and a shockwave filled the alley. The paint on the walls shed, and cracks appeared on the ground. In a flash, Han Xiao jumped up, drawing a swift arc midair, and bumped toward the enemy like a rocket. Yang Dian bit his teeth and stepped forward, swinging out his punch. Bang! The mechanical suit-covered fist was like a bolt of lightning, appearing and disappearing in an instant. Before Yang Dian's fist could even swing fully, it had already hit Yang Dian's chest heavily. Yang Dian's vision turned hazy, everything in sight seemed to move away rapidly as he flew backwards. He then got punched into the wall with a loud noise, every bone in the body almost shattering. One-hit victory. His physical power is even stronger than the lion who caused serious injury to me. Yang Dian barely pulled himself out of the wall and breathed heavily. Suddenly, he heard a gust of wind around his ears. Ned was thrown toward him and fell beside his feet with a huge bump on his head. He had been knocked dizzy by a simple headbutt from Han Xiao. They could not even last 3 seconds. With absolutely zero chance to fight back, Yang Dian was filled with sadness and hatred. How are we supposed to stop the opponent like this? Helplessness penetrated their hearts. Han Xiao looked at the timer as he saw the duo trying to get back up. He had given himself 5 minutes to deal with these two superheroes, but the situation had turned out to be much easier. He had taken less than 10 seconds to beat them completely. They were both superhumans at the level of 30-something. With Han Xiao's strength, it was a piece of cake. Han Xiao took a few steps forward. Just as he was going to say something, Yang Dian managed to struggle to his feet. With a face filled with unyielding and anger, he clenched his teeth and said, "You took away the cure for the death virus. Lots and lots of people will die because of that. I will stop you today even if it costs me my life." Han Xiao stopped in place. He looked at Yang Dian with a mocking smile. "So you want to die a hero this badly, but, other than dead flowers, empty words, and a few hypocritical tears, what will that get you?" Yang Dian clenched his teeth even harder. "It doesn't matter how others look at me as long as I'm happy with what I'm doing." Suddenly, Yang Dian blinked. A large, black hand enlarged in his sight and grabbed his head. He was smashed into a wall, shattering the stones. His head was bleeding. Yang Dian lay flat on the ground, his head spinning. He did not even have the strength to stand up. Han Xiao took out his handgun and pressed it against Yang Dian's forehead. The black-colored muzzle brought Yang Dian back to his senses. He wanted to struggle, but Han Xiao stepped on his legs, then slowly applied pressure to the trigger. Yang Dian's eyes widened. At this moment, regret uncontrollably flooded his mind. If I wasn't so meddlesome, I wouldn't die today. In front of an enemy that's this strong, even if I bet my life on it, I wouldn't be able to stop him for a bit. Coming here was just giving my life away. I shouldn't have accepted the request. I was too impulsive. Ka. The trigger reached its end. Yang Dian's entire body trembled, only to realize that he did not feel any pain. He was stunned as he watched Han Xiao back off. Then he realized that cold sweat had drenched all his clothes. Although he could not see his own face, he knew that it was definitely a twisted expression filled with fear, regret, and unwillingness. "What were you thinking just now?" Han Xiao asked. Poster's notes. LMFAO, Han just fight club this mother lover. Yang Dian froze in place but kept silence. In the face of death, the belief that he had once thought would never be destroyed was shaken. He was not as generous and tough as he said at all. Instead, at that moment, it was regret he felt, and he even thought that giving up his life for a request from others was extremely stupid. Yet before this event, he had always been working hard toward the goal of being a superhero. He wanted to save more people, he wanted to protect more civilians, he wanted to sacrifice himself for others. But at this moment, Yang Dian only felt lost. Han Xiao put his handgun with the empty clip back to the holster, took out a laptop, transferred some data to a thumb drive, and threw it to Yang Dian. Yang Dian and Ned froze in place. The enemy left just like that? Why did he not kill us? Yang Dian held the thumb drive in a daze. We are no match for him. Don't go up to him and look for death. We have to leave here first. Yang Dian held onto Ned, and they left limping. Another mission failure, the duo's hearts were filled with shame. They could not face Kate. When they arrived at Lewis Research Institution's door, the military was already there, and the area was locked down. The duo did not want to come into contact with the Maple military, so they went back to the place where they rested and dressed their wounds. Yang Dian kept thinking about what Han Xiao had said. He was confused and could not focus at all. He lay on the bed dazed, the thoughts from just now flashing in his mind non-stop. He could feel that his belief and perspective of being a superhero were shaken. He felt at war with his own mind. At this time, Ned could not hold back his curiosity of what was inside the thumb drive. He plugged it into the laptop, and only a few seconds of looking at it made him break out in cold sweat. Yang, come here and look at this. Chapter 183, Drugs. What is it? Yang Dian tried to regain his focus and went up to the laptop screen. Then he, too, was stunned. The files on the thumb drive were a part of the data that Han Xiao had gotten from hacking into the research institution. Every research project of the death virus was clearly written to be regarding enhancing physical abilities and biochemistry weapons. There was no mention of the cure Kate talked about. It was also written that the exploration team that had gone into the Robert Forbidden Zone had been gathering materials for physical ability enhancements research. This is real? Could he be lying? He could have killed us easily. Why would he lie to us? Yang Dian and Ned slowly turned from consternation to rage. It turned out that they were like two idiots from the start to the end, toyed with by the people of Lewis Research Institution. They could not believe that they were so naive to have believed the one-sided words of these people. It made them feel like their persistence was nothing but a joke. No wonder the mysterious warrior in the mechanical suit did not kill them. He probably felt that they were pathetic and pitiful, so he told them the truth. Yang Dian was so ashamed and embarrassed that he wanted to dig a hole in the ground and hide in it. They kept calling themselves superhero, but they were saved by a stranger who they deemed wicked twice. If the mysterious man had not exposed the truth, they would still have been totally in the dark. Too bad we don't know his name. If we did, Elle definitely would apologize to him in person. Ned was upset. Yang Dian nodded heavily. With raging anger burning inside, he called Kate. You have been lying to us. Kate sounded stunned. What did I lie about? You have been using us. You made us risk our lives to do things for you. The exploration team, the cure to the virus, that was all fake. What are you talking about? Why would I do that? You are overthinking this. Kate's made an unnatural pause. I have evidence. The research of the death virus has nothing to do with saving lives. Yang Dian said. That's fake. You guys must have heard rumors, Kate replied. Still lying to us. Yang Dian was angry. He then stated the project serial number. The other side of the phone remained silent for a while, then Kate replied in a cold tone. He gave up pretending. So what? What do you want to do, or rather, what can you do? Yang Dian was furious, but he suddenly jammed. Humph, superhero. Kate's tone was full of sarcasm as he hung up the call. Yang Dian held the phone and froze in place. His aura was changing quickly. Ned suddenly felt a chill. He quickly asked, "Are you alright?" Yang Dian shook his head and put down the phone. "I'm alright, why wouldn't I be?" He. He laughed inexplicably. The research institution was in a mess. The high-ranked officials were sweating all over as they negotiated with the military. Kate was annoyed. He did not expect things to have turned out this way when he lured the wolf into the room. No one had dared to mess with the research institution before. They had many financial organizations behind them, and anyone who stroked the tiger's beard would face its wrath, finding themselves chased down by the organizations and their many allies with no escape. After contacting the financial organizations backing them, the organizations were all understandably furious. He called himself Germinal Organization's Executive Officer Heisenberg, and he had a mechanical suit with extremely advanced technology. It was quite convincing. The Germinal Organization was like a mouse crossing the street. Everyone wanted to beat them. It did not seem to matter how many enemies they made in the process, but they all knew that it was a gamble. The financial organizations decided to not only let Western continent's intelligence organizations look thoroughly for this person, but they were also going to give money to the Six Nations expedition through military donations. The reason behind these financial organizations having such an exaggerated reaction was because there were drugs that the owners of these organizations urgently needed among the stolen stock. Therefore, they desperately needed it back even if it meant they had to spend more money. Kate was already annoyed enough. He did not even want to bother about the questioning from the two superheroes, and he did not care at all about them finding out the truth. Because superheroes would never take revenge for such small matter. Thus, Kate was calmed and had nothing to fear. Han Xiao had taken off the mechanical suit, changed his face and mixed into the crowd. Trial of a hero completed. Plus 40 Yang Dian's impression of you, plus 40 Ned's impression of you. Han Xiao waited for some time, but there were no new notifications. That's it? What do I need the good impression from these two guys for? He had never even heard of these two guys before, so they were probably not anyone important. Han Xiao was speechless. It was a reasonable reward, but he would have even preferred experience points over this. He wanted to both laugh and break things, but never mind, it's just a small mission. The biggest rewards are these drugs. Han Xiao chuckled as he looked down at the bulging package in his hands. When he stole, that was wrong, but when he was requisitioning the drugs, Han Xiao took everything in the exhibition room of Lewis Research Institution, which was almost every type of drug. Word choice decided perception and therefore good and evil. He found a random small hotel and checked in. As usual, he first checked to see if there were surveillance cameras, then he opened his backpack and took out all the various drugs before arranging them in rows. Let's see if there's any good stuff. Han Xiao rubbed his hands. He had heard that one would be lucky if one's hands were heated. Green lizard drug, medium concentration 23.3% made from the green lizard genes. This is a lazy being. After you drink this, you will feel calm. Han Xiao stunned for 3 seconds. Then he stood up in rage and threw it on the floor. Green my ass, what's the point of even inventing this kind of drug? I would have been luckier if I used my feet one. Looking at this pile of colorful drugs, Han Xiao felt as if a black cloud of bad luck was floating above his head. Let's hope the other drugs are better. He continued searching. There was a total of 34 types of drugs, and luckily, there was not another one that was as useless as the green lizard drug. Some of the useful drugs were pretty great. There was a high concentration death virus enhancement drug, which had a much stronger effect than the one Kate gave. The permanent attribute boost was greater, and the chance to awaken the rare talent was at least 3 times higher. Wild rhinoceros steroid, taken from the heart of wild rhinoceros. Injection gives plus 5 STR, plus 5 endurance. Lasts 5 minutes. Second injection within 30 minutes will have no effect. Thunderclaw beast extraction, extracted from the bodily fluids of thunderclaw beasts. Plus 12% melee attack for the next 5 attacks. Stone plaque pathogen, infects the user with stone plaque. There were 3 types of drugs: temporary enhancement drugs, disease-spreading drugs, and the very rare permanent attribute boost drugs like the death virus enhancement drug. Some of the permanent attribute boost drugs can only be used once, and some can be used multiple times. The eagle predator drug is the former, and the death virus drug is the latter. That was why players were so passionate about going to the Forbidden Zone and killing the boss. Usually, it would be a competition between large guilds. You used eagle predator drug, Plus 3 dex. There were 4 bottles of the death virus drug. He took a short break and finished all of them in one shot. His strength, dexterity, and endurance all increased by 4, and that bottle with high concentration made him awaken the rare talent. Extraordinary physique. Plus 10% health. Plus 180% recovery rate. Plus 8% abnormalities resistance. Chapter 184, It's more torturous to think of a title than to write a chapter. It was a tank-biased talent, not up to the standard of being a molding ability, but it did make Han Xiao tankier. He recalled that Hyla had a recovery passive too. Extraordinary physique had similar effects and also gave him another 300 HP from the health boost. As a mechanic, is it really a good thing to be this tanky? Han Xiao did not know whether to laugh or to cry. This was forcing him to fight people head-on. He felt like if he continued like this, his style would totally shatter. I just want to be a technical mechanic. Close combat is for savages. I need to find an offensive talent or manufacturing talent, but those kinds of molding ability are way too rare. The most common ones are still defensive and enhancement ones. As a mechanic, talents that could match with his firearms were what he needed the most. He had been hoping to trigger the lethal shot talent. Although it was not a molding ability, it had rather good effects. The requirement was to deal extremely high damage with his firearm to targets that were at least the same level as him 50 times. He had already done that almost 40 times, but enemies at his level were getting harder to find. He had to spend some time to do it. As for the temporary enhancement drugs, he planned to put some of them in the mechanical suit's rapid injection module and then find an opportunity to sell the rest, preferably to players, which would be another sum of money. Among the drugs, surprisingly, there was one that was incomplete and only had one syringe. Unknown drug, a semi-finished product of some drug, unknown effects. Its color was clear like water. Usually, unknown things would have surprising effects. Han Xiao had an inkling that this thing was not simple, but he would not use it when its effects were unclear. Lewis Research Institution might complete their research in the future. I will just have to go there again at some point, and I will know its effects when it's completed. Han Xiao raised his eyebrows. In order to make drugs or learn about magic potions, one had to gain the class pharmacist. Han Xiao was not interested in making potions and wasting class slots, and he felt making potions and drugs were very different from making machines. As making potions demanded strict material ratios and manufacturing processes, a tiny mistake could cause failure, whereas making machines was just a channeling process. Han Xiao snuck out of Kalos in the afternoon. He had another threatening mission in Maple. Bennett wanted him to scare some government officials who lived in the capital of Maple. The 2 people who had gone there first to check on the situation was already at standby in the city of Maple Leaf. The capital of Maple was called Karimachi, meaning the city of Maple Leaf. The financial organizations behind Lewis Research Institution issued a bounty on the darknet very quickly. The target was none other than Heisenberg, and it had the face that Han Xiao had used in the research institution, as well as a recording of him dashing out of the research institution wearing a mechanical suit. The Germinal organization saw this information very soon. There is no such person in our organization. The leader was startled. The organization only had a few deep cover intelligence personnel and spies in other lands, and he absolutely did not order anyone to rob a civilian research institution. There was only one possibility. This Heisenberg was a fake who used the Germinal organization as cover. He did not even think this was a framing act, because framing Germinal organization was totally unnecessary. The whole world was against them, so they would not care for just one more enemy. Since the Germinal organization was beaten, everyone took them lightly, like a tiger without its fangs, and added insult to their injury. What kind of nobody was this Heisenberg? What the leader focused on was the performance of the mechanical suit. To his surprise, he realized that this mechanical suit was using technology that was even more advanced than what the organization was currently working on. Even the super soldier project that kept having breakthroughs did not have this level of practicality. If we can get hold of this mechanical suit, our single unit combat power will skyrocket. Which organization invented this mechanical suit? If it's our NMY. The leader's hands grabbed harder onto the table edge, leaving a clear mark on the metal table. With a serious tone, he ordered, "Tell our intelligence network to pay attention secretly to the user of this mechanical suit. I want to know everything he's doing." However, this was sadly the only time Han Xiao was observed using the mechanical suit. The intelligence agents of the Germinal organization were unable to gather any more information. It was all very mysterious. An organization that can invent such a mechanical suit definitely has very strong backing. The leader felt like he had discovered the tip of the iceberg of some hidden organization, but they did not have any other leads, so there was nothing they could do at the moment. He calmed his mind and asked, "How is the capturing of Inhumans going?" The assistant took out the archives. "We have captured 2,103 Inhumans. At the start, they were gathered at a few fixed points, but afterward, they started to actively escape from capture and spread to other areas. Also more and more have resisted being captured, and our mission has been meeting some obstacles. Cyberlos has come up with a new theory through observing the experiments. Even if these Inhumans are not brainwashed, they will still accept all kinds of requests, and they act with a very clear objective. They do not have much common sense, they talk weirdly, and they seem to have some kind of special way of communication between each other. Some Inhumans knew each other. We are still investigating the causes of all that, but we have yet to gain any results. As Cyberlos put it, these Inhumans are like time travelers who came from the past." "What is the stance of the Six Nations toward the Inhumans?" the leader asked. "Our intelligence network shows that the Six Nations have sent their own teams of people to contact the Inhumans. They had different attitudes, anywhere from friendly to forceful." The leader nodded. After pondering a moment, he said, "They have stopped their war preparation, but it won't be stopped forever. Agents from every country have already infiltrated Andrea. Find them. I want their every move to be under our surveillance. I have a feeling that Inhumans will be the key for us in this war." Reflections on the sunglasses showed the exterior appearance of a luxurious villa. There were Secret Service agents in normal clothes patrolling around the area continuously. A white old man who looked like a beggar pushed his sunglasses up, touched the cap that covered his bald head, and then fidgeted with the mini earphone that was hidden under the cap in his ear. Duplex 4-floor villa. The manor door needs the interior system to be opened. 2 standard Secret Service teams patrolling outside the manor, 1 team inside, a total of 18 Secret Service agents. Leaves house 8 a.m. sharp every morning, travels in a bulletproof car. 2 teams follow for protection, has lunch at the interior restaurant of the government building, the same team follows along for protection. Hans spoke softly into the headset as he pushed his sunglasses. The target lives in Maple's political area. Patrolling police and sentries are packed along the roads. If you're doing it on the streets, you'd better be quick about it. The calm voice of a woman, Vernina, was heard through the headset. Then let's do it on the streets. This reminds me of the old days. I must be mad, Hans said with discontent. Still doing things with you guys after I have retired, and it's to kidnap a high-ranked officer of Maple. Damn it, Garion, why did you have to find me for this? Why didn't you ask Bennett? He's still fighting on the front lines. You had to look for this retired old man. Couldn't you let me enjoy a few years of leisure? Humph, you owe me a favor, and I don't like Bennett. He gave me 3 bullet holes 33 years ago. Another voice appeared in the headset. Garion was a rough man, his voice was like a cannon. Anyway, stop complaining like some woman. Have the days of doing nothing and planting vegetation turned you into a complete pussy? Gentlemen, don't forget there's a woman here, Vernina said calmly. I am already 60, and you are 1 year older than me. It's not normal for you to think about fighting and killing all day. Hans was speechless. Humph, I'm yet to hit 70. Is that old? Garion whined for a while and turned back to being serious. In 9 seconds, patrolling officers will appear from the corner. Be careful to stay hidden. Hans leaned forward, and his aura immediately turned unnoticeable. After 9 seconds, a patrolling police officer walked around the corner of the street and saw Hans. He walked forward and yelled, "Identification check." Hans took out the fake ID that looked exactly like a real one. The officer glanced through and returned it. No lingering here. Move along. Hans moved his feet slowly like an old man, turned at the corner, then sped up. He said softly, "There are too many patrolling police officers and sentries here. To kidnap the target quietly without anyone noticing, it'll be best to do it at night. Come back here first. We will discuss the plan," Garion said with a heavy voice. Chapter 185, but not having a title is more torturous. Translator, Atlas Studios Editor, Atlas Studios. It was gloomy and raining in the western continent. After a few days of taking the shaky civilian train, Han Xiao finally arrived in the capital of Maple, the city of Maple Leaf. Maple's population density was low despite having a large area of land. Houses were cheap, and the average house size was rather big. Even those in the middle income bracket were able to afford a villa. The civilians in the capital had a pretty high income. Every year, the government of Maple would chase the beggars and the poor to other cities, which resulted in Maple Leaf's environment being optimal, peaceful, and comfortable with sufficient greenery. Han Xiao was smuggled in as usual. Following the map, he found a villa at the edge of Maple Leaf. It was a safe house that Darknet had bought with a fake account and identity. The contact would be waiting inside. The villa had 3 floors. The door was made from grey glazed wood and had exquisite carvings. Han Xiao grabbed the door knocker and thumped to the rhythm of their secret code. The door opened with a squeak, and an old female butler who had more wrinkles than an expired orange invited him in with a plain face. After entering the house, the old woman, whose true identity was a long-term resident contact, closed the door and said, "Both guests are waiting in the basement." Han Xiao nodded. He opened a hidden door in the cabinet beside the staircase and walked down to the basement. It was not as dark as he had imagined it to be. It was bright and surrounded by metal walls. Many pieces of equipment and firearms lay around. There was also a specially designed lathe and a material case at the corner. The 2 contacts were waiting at the meeting table in the middle. They both looked toward Han Xiao. His face was changed back to Black Phantom, so he was recognized. Of the 2 contacts, one was Golden Fox, and the other was a young man. Golden Fox hesitated and said, "Black Phantom." Han Xiao's eyes brightened. He laughed and said, "Oh, it's you. I've seen you before. You seem to have become prettier." Golden Fox was frightened. She touched her face and said in her head, "Please don't be interested in me, I beg you." The other contact was a young man in his 20s. His code name in the Blood Pack Society was Ghostblade. He was a Scorpion lowest rank and a new member who had only joined recently. He was staring at Han Xiao with judgment and slight doubt. Ghostblade had been trained as an agent in Raylan, but he had escaped before graduation. Having been trained in an agent training organization, he naturally always felt a sense of superiority toward these underground killers. He had joined the Blood Pack Society around the same time Han Xiao did, but Han Xiao was already a legend in the organization while he was still struggling in the Scorpion grade. So, he had always been unconvinced. In terms of experience, Han Xiao actually did not have much of it, but he became the ace of Blood Pack Society with his strength and Bennett backing him up. There were a small group of proud contract killers who were unconvinced. Most of them had other successful experiences before they turned to become a killer. Despite the results of these battles were written clearly, there would still be people who were in doubt unless they saw it themselves. "I heard about your battles. They say you're a legend, but it seems like there's nothing special," Ghostblade said with a plain face. Han Xiao glanced at Ghostblade but could not be bothered with him. Golden Fox cut in hurriedly and started talking about the main topic. "Ahem. There are 5 targets: Harry Raymond, Senan Miller, Billy Angus, Dick Van Vancity, Dorothy Faramai. They are all government officials who opposed the plan. There are guards around them when they're out and where they live." With a glance to Ghostblade, he snorted, took out a map, and laid it out on the meeting table. "This is the terrain map of the target's villa. The guarding power and the patrolling routes of police nearby are also marked out." The data was very detailed. Ghostblade's ability to collect intelligence was the textbook example that strictly followed the training booklet of Raylan. He had collected almost every detail there was in this mission. With the secret knowledge he had as an agent, Golden Fox did not need to help at all when he was gathering the data. It made him feel superior to these killers. After all, he was a pro, and amateurs were on a different level. Ghostblade peeked at Han Xiao. He was confident that such detailed intelligence would surprise the Black Phantom, but Han Xiao kept a straight face as if it was a common occurrence to him. With a frown, Ghostblade said in a deep voice, "I have designed an action plan for you. You see these red lines and marks? These are the action routes I have planned out. As long as you keep to my plan and don't make any mistakes, you will definitely succeed. I'm assuming you understand what I wrote here. These are special symbols used by agents. If you don't understand them, I can explain for you." "No need, I will look at it myself." Han Xiao knocked the table while reading through the intelligence carefully. He then asked, "What is the exact mission?" To place these documents into the target's homes, somewhere obvious that ensures the target sees them. Inside, there are some pieces of evidence that have the ability to cause them harm. As long as they realize that we can put these in their house without anyone noticing, they will know they are not safe. This will act as a threat but not cross the line, Golden Fox said. I will be infiltrating. What will you guys do? I am only responsible for providing intelligence. Carrying out the mission is your mission as an ace, so don't think about seeking my help, Ghostblade snorted. Golden Fox gave Ghostblade a stare, before saying in a pleasing tone to Han Xiao, if you need me to back you up, I can do it. Never mind, there's no need for that. Han Xiao waved his hands. It's a pretty easy mission. I can do it alone. It is indeed easy when you follow my plan. Ghostblade nodded lightly. He had actually left out some intelligence in the data. It would not affect the mission, but it would give the person carrying out the mission some slight challenges. He wanted to test out Black Phantom. Although the latter was an ace of the organization, unless he could pass the test, Ghostblade would still maintain a cold attitude toward Black Phantom. However, Han Xiao looked at the plan and shook his head. The plan is too complicated. I will do it my way. Ghostblade was unhappy. This plan was made from my careful and precise research of all the intelligence we have, and you came up with a better one within a few minutes of looking at it. This mission really isn't even a challenge for me, Han Xiao remarked flatly. Quit messing around. Ghostblade snorted with anger and walked away. He was very discontent that Black Phantom did not follow his plan. He was a professional, and his plan was perfect. Black Phantom had no idea of what he was looking at. There will definitely be accidents if he doesn't follow my plan, Ghostblade thought. He had some dark thoughts, and he even wanted to gloat at Black Phantom's failure. To him, not following his plan was basically screwing around. Black Phantom had better have meant what he said. If he ends up using my plan, I will only look down on him. Han Xiao looked at his watch. I will act tonight. You guys just have to wait. The two contacts were not involved in the field action, and Han Xiao did not need a supporting intelligence crew. Since it was just Han Xiao acting alone, there was no need for a headset. He's only just arrived, and he is already going to act. How impulsive. Ghostblade shook his head. He felt this mission was most likely going to fail. Not listening to suggestions from professionals would almost always result in failure. Night arrived in no time, but clouds covered the moon. Han Xiao had changed into a black outfit. He hid whatever he was not going to need in the safe house. Then he made sure the circuits were working and reset the password to prevent anyone from opening it. He brought along the necessary equipment and left. At night, the streets of Maple were quiet. The night wind blew past the trees, producing a calming sound as fragrance from the gardens at the side of the street filled the air. There were few pedestrians on the street. In fact, those few pedestrians were mostly patrolling police, which hinted at the high-pressure policies within the country and the security not being as peaceful as it looked. Han Xiao walked past quiet streets one after another and arrived at the political area of the city. Patrols on the street became more frequent, so he hid in the shadow of an alley, observed the situation, and waited patiently. About 10 minutes later, a patrolling police officer walked toward him. This is B-3248. We are clear, he said into the walkie-talkie and walked toward the alley entrance. Then, he unconsciously looked into the dark alley. A pair of arms reached out suddenly and dragged him into darkness. His yelling only lasted a mere second before it stopped. 1 minute later, Han Xiao had transformed, wearing the police uniform and walkie-talkie at the side of his waist. His face had changed completely, the skin mask had scanned the policeman's face and imitated it perfectly. Chapter 186, Accident, 1. Han Xiao injected sleeping medicine into the police officer and hid him in a rubbish bin in the alley. He probably would not be discovered until the next morning. The strong sleeping medicine was not the normal kind one would find on the market but a secret recipe made by Golden Fox. She claimed that it could make a 3-meter-tall elephant fall asleep in 10 seconds. As for why she used an elephant to experiment, Han Xiao was confused too. Golden Fox had the intention of endearing herself to Han Xiao by providing the sleeping medicine, but Han Xiao had a feeling that the atmosphere between him and Golden Fox was very weird. Every time their eyes met, it felt like it ignited a spark in the air. Golden Fox would shrink backward like an injured little beast and turn to look at somewhere else, not daring to look Han Xiao in the eye. If Han Xiao did not remember giving Golden Fox a weird impression back when he was too bored, with Golden Fox acting like a young girl in love, he would have thought she wanted to do something inappropriate to him. However, he knew that she was actually afraid of him. Han Xiao diluted the medicine so that it was not that strong. Normal people would wake up after about 10 hours. He had tested it himself and was notified that one with endurance higher than 45 would be immune to it. He had more than 80 and close to 90. The average endurance of a LV-55 mechanic is around 70. Han Xiao did not exceed that by a large portion, but his health was more than 1.5 times of the same level mechanic. With molding ability, basic strengthened life and the recently awakened extraordinary physique, Han Xiao's health was an astonishing amount of about 3,400. Together with magnetically controlled retractable armor and his Viper mech, which only a mechanic would have, he was at the same standard as the similarly leveled boss. However, this was the capital of Maple. If he was to be too high profile, he would probably not end up well, so he decided to do an ordinary infiltration like Agent 47. Wearing the police uniform, Han Xiao swaggered toward the villa of the first target, Sen Miller. Trees and vegetation filled the garden on the side of the road, and branches sliced the light from street lamps into thin light curtains. Using Night Stalker's ability, Han Xiao entered stealth. He walked around the villa and observed the cameras on the streets. Total of 3 surveillance cameras looking at 3 different directions of the villa. They rotate at the same speed automatically. Seems like there'll be a blind spot for a brief moment. Han Xiao found the opportunity, but this was not written in the data. He wondered if Ghostblade did not realize or did not write it on purpose. In order to sneak in, I'll first have to deal with the cameras. Every 5 minutes, the camera's field of sight will leave a 2-second blind spot, which made things much easier. There was no need to go through the trouble of accessing the circuits of the camera and invading the surveillance network. As long as he was fast enough to enter the villa, he could avoid getting caught by the cameras. Due to the surveillance of the city not being looked at every hour of the day, a patrolling officer going missing would not be noticed immediately unless it was seen by the surveillance monitor. He was not hoping to infiltrate perfectly without leaving any trace. All he wanted to do was complete the mission that night. There were Secret Service agents standing both inside and outside of the villa, detection devices at the door, and electrical railings on the wall. But other than that, it was no different from a normal residence. The agents outside were easy to deal with, he just needed to divert their attention. However, there were also people in the manor, and he could not identify their positions with his eyes. Han Xiao had his ways though. He put on a pair of sunglasses. They looked just like any normal sunglasses, but they actually had a portable version of the electromagnetic scanner. By clicking the mini switch on its side, the biological reaction inside the manor would appear as blurry human-shaped images, which was enough to identify their location. However, it was weird to wear a pair of sunglasses during the night. It reminded him of a scene in Kung Fu Hustle. The officials of Maple had guards around them all day as if they were afraid of being attacked even on the streets, which was an indication of how much they were disliked by the civilians. Unlike the other 5 nations, which did not have this kind of measure, even the air in Maple felt pressurized. The cultures of various nations were different, and these protective measures the government officials were using in Maple had not been there from the beginning. It happened because of the same reason that led the government to create the policy of evicting low-class civilians in the capital, the Ulrich assault, the government assault event that everyone in Maple knew but was afraid to talk about. It happened in the 11th year of the new era of the 6 nations. Han Xiao had seen this segment of history in the Darknet history events. Every civilization in Galaxy had some history that was worth digging for. However, in the case of Maple, whether in his previous or current life, Han Xiao did not know much about it. These thoughts flashed past as he was in the middle of the mission, then he continued to think about the infiltration plan. The Secret Service agents patrolling the villa had looked like they should not be messed with. Han Xiao put down a spider detector and observed from a hidden corner. If he himself passed by the villa too many times, it would have raised suspicions. He found an opportunity very soon. The second a blind spot appeared between the field of vision of the Secret Service agents and the cameras. He activated his electromagnetic hover boots and slid over the wall without a sound, smoothly landing behind a tree in the manor. Although he controlled his movements as much as he could, the leaves still shook a little. A highly alert secret agent hiding below the tree noticed the movement and immediately looked up. Han Xiao had a plan the moment he jumped in. Without any hesitation, when the Secret Service agent was carefully looking up with squinting eyes, Han Xiao moved like a phantom with his more than 100 points of dexterity and appeared from behind a tree. He covered the Secret Service agent's mouth and injected a syringe. Before the Secret Service agent could struggle, he was already quiet. It did not make a loud noise, but there was another agent not far away that saw his friend leaving the position in the edge of his vision. Fortunately, Han Xiao was too fast for him to see. Sealy. The agent called his friend's name quietly and walked over. Shit, Han Xiao thought. Traditional infiltration was all about timing. He kept his nerves tight at all times and came up with a solution very soon. He quickly scanned the face of the agent he knocked out and changed into his face. He walked out from behind a tree and shook his head, signaling that everything was fine. What were you doing behind the tree? The agent who had walked over loosened his alert as he saw his friend. He continued to close in, wanting to know what happened behind the tree. Han Xiao flipped his hands and a tiny handgun appeared. It shot a syringe out quietly and hit the neck of the Secret Service agent. The agent's footsteps became unstable as he was falling asleep. Han Xiao immediately dashed forward and held him up. Then he carefully dragged the man behind the tree. There were 4 patrols in the manor. They contacted each other with walkie-talkie constantly, so within a few seconds, the others would realize 2 of their colleagues had lost contact. I've got to knock out all the patrols, Han Xiao thought. The Secret Service agents inside and outside were 2 different teams, and they only contacted each other once in a while. Removing the external agents would give him about half an hour, which was enough time for him to act. Han Xiao moved quickly and quietly like a cat. The other 2 patrolling agents were knocked out in no time. They were just well-trained normal elites, so they could not resist Han Xiao at all. After making sure the patrols were cleared, Han Xiao entered the villa from the window. He turned on the electromagnetic sunglasses, and the villa's structure was presented clearly before his eyes. The bald official was sleeping while hugging his young and beautiful wife in the master bedroom, and there was a maid sleeping in another room. In such a big house, there were only 3 people. Han Xiao found his way to the study. He took out the document that had evidence collected by the darknet and placed it in an obvious position on the table. One target was completed. I shall not delay. There's still some time till Maple finds out someone has sneaked in. I have to speed up. Han Xiao swiftly sneaked out of the manor. The Secret Service agents that were guarding outside were still doing their job, not knowing what had happened inside. Han Xiao infiltrated 3 more targets' villas. The guards were all different from each other, but with his LV-55 senses and intelligence provided by Golden Fox and Ghostblade, together with his skin mask and electromagnetic hover boots, the action was carried out rather smoothly without many hiccups. A small accident happened at the 3rd target. When Han Xiao was placing the document in the study, probably due to the target being too old, he woke up quivering and wanted to pass by the study. Han Xiao hastily hid behind the floor lamp in the corner. Without looking closely, floor lamps would usually be mistaken as a person and be ignored unconsciously. Although it was a very daring spot to hide, Han Xiao thought it was a brilliant idea. However, the result was completely different from what he expected. Having woken up in the middle of the night, wanting to go to the bathroom, already being scared while walking in the dark corridor, the old man passed by the book room and mistook the floor lamp for a person, which made him even more nervous. When he wanted to take a closer look and assure himself that he was just being scared of nothing, he noticed. Holy shit! There actually is someone behind the lamp. The target was an elderly man. He covered his chest and fell straight down. You have killed Dick Van Vancity, LV5. You have received 1 EXP. The target was scared to death, death. Fuck. Seriously. Han Xiao was completely stunned. I didn't kill anyone. You suffered from a myocardial infarction, I'm innocent. Hey, Grandpa, wake up. You still have so much youth to look forward to. How can you die like this? Han Xiao shook the old man's shoulders continuously, almost shattering his bones. Accidentally killed the target, what now? Han Xiao had a headache. Suddenly, he had a flash of insight, and he had a new idea. Wait a minute, the fundamental purpose of this mission is to reduce the number of officials that are opposing the project. If they all die, there will be nobody opposing. Achoo! Bennett, who was far away at southern continent, suddenly sneezed. He had a bad premonition. Flu. Chapter 187, Accident, 2. Translator, Atlas Studios Editor, Atlas Studios. One of the targets died, but the mission did not fail, which meant that killing was technically allowed. Such an immoral mission. Han Xiao shook his head. He carried the dead body of the old man and put it into the cabinet. The longer it stays hidden the better it is. He did not want to kill. The targets were all officials of a rather high rank, and killing them would cause a storm in Maple. Thus, there were no benefits, only risks. One official had died, but it was an accident. They could not count him responsible. Only one target was left, Durasi Faramai. He had the highest rank of all 5 targets. His manor was bigger, and the guarding power was stronger. Han Xiao followed the same steps. He sneaked into the manor through the blind spot and hid in the shadows. None of the patrols could escape his sights. He sneaked behind an agent and injected a syringe into his neck, then he dragged him further into the garden and changed into his clothes and face. He looked at his identification. The unlucky person this time was called Anguston. Durasi's manor was rather huge. As Han Xiao was going to enter through the window from the back of the villa's lights turned on. A command from a superior appeared from walkie-talkie. All units assemble. Escort the target to the government building. All the Secret Service agents gathered. Now Han Xiao was stuck in a passive position. He replaced Anguston and had to continue playing the character if he did not want to get found out. Left with no choice, he followed the Secret Service team and assembled in front of the villa door. The team leader knocked the door and yelled, "Mr. Durasi, knocked out agents have been found in other officials' mansions. The enemy infiltrated their homes. You're not safe here. Please follow us to the government building and take refuge." Han Xiao realized it was about time for Maple to have reacted to the people that he knocked out in the previous mansions. Too bad, just a while more I would have completed the last one. Han Xiao sighed. He had to change his plans because of the sudden change of situation. He hoped they would find out later about the old man who was shoved into the cabinet. The glazed wooden door opened with a squeak. An old man with a straight back in formal wear walked out the door. The wrinkles on his face were like knife scars full of vicissitudes and coldness, and his white hair was combed neatly. Secret Service agents surrounded Durasi as they walked toward the car parked at the door. There were 4 cars. The one that Durasi would be sitting in was in the middle, guarded by the 3 other cars in a triangle shape. Han Xiao sat in the car at the right rear. As they departed, Han Xiao decided to stay put and observe since it was the best choice. I could sneak out in the middle of the trip and complete the last mission on the way. As he was thinking, a few fist-sized shadows flew toward the convoy. Han Xiao knew these were howitzers from one look. Boom! The howitzers landed accurately on the chassis of the convoys and exploded. The power exceeded the usual standard, almost like a mini rocket launcher. Sky-high flames lit up the night. The 3 guarding vehicles spun in midair and landed bottom up with flames. Someone attacked the convoy. The driver of Durasi's car yelled as he hastily stepped on the throttle, wanting to escape with speed, but a few rounds of bullets shot out from the dark and busted the wheels. The car swirled and stopped at the side of the road. 4 disgraced Secret Service agents got out of the car hurriedly, but before they could even raise their guns, sniper bullets shot from a higher-up position hit their chests without missing a shot. They immediately fell to the ground, critically injured. All the guards have been dealt with. Backup from Maple will take at least 3 minutes to arrive. We have more than enough time. Vernina, evacuate with the target, Han said through the walkie-talkie. At the junction of street lamps and darkness, the outline of a woman became clearer. Vernina appeared, holding a grenade launcher. She had short, blonde hair. The wrinkles at the side of her eyes showed she was not very young, but her appearance still had the signs of her beauty when she was younger. Every move she made played the melody of a mature lady. Durasi walked out of the car. He remained calm and looked at the struggling guards on the floor. Who are you people? Vernina slowly walked toward Durasi while taking out her handgun and killing the guards on the way. She took out a sedative syringe from her tactical pouch on her waist and said, "Put the gun down, or there'll be a hole in your heart." Durasi's expression changed. He looked down and saw a red dot on his chest where his heart was. He immediately loosened his grip on the handgun behind his back. Looking up, he could see a looming red dot from a sniper scope on a high-rise building. At a window in the building, Hans was holding a sniper rifle, providing ranged backup and controlling the situation from above. Seems like I have no choice. Durasi raised his hands with a long face and walked toward Vernina. Bang! Suddenly, An overturned burning car's door flew off. A pair of hands grabbed the door frame and tore it with a piercing sound. Han Xiao walked out as he stretched his neck, his body was hurting all over from the crash. Having been blown away by a howitzer out of nowhere, he was in a bad mood. There's still an alive one. Vernina turned around and fired at Han Xiao without changing her expression. Han Xiao reacted quickly. The magnetically controlled retractable armor wrapped around his body as the howitzer hit him, and he was devoured by the flames. Vernina thought that was more than enough to deal with the tiny fish that slipped through the net, but after the smoke disappeared, Han Xiao was still standing there, staring at her coldly. The expression in his eyes made her nervous. In her career of battling through the ages, she had fought all kinds of strong enemies and developed a sharp intuition that could quickly identify the strength of the enemy. She could tell from just one look that these were the eyes of a predator. Han Xiao had a horrible expression on his face when he saw the information on her in the interface. The enemy was called Vernina. She was an astonishing LV-60 cannon master, which was the limit of version 1.0, someone who was at the top of the pyramid on planet Aquamarine. This was the second person after Bennett on planet Aquamarine that was at the maximum level. But she didn't have as many molding abilities as Bennett. Vernina, the name sounds familiar, Han Xiao thought. For such a high-level person to attack an official of Maple, there was definitely some hidden agenda. Han Xiao was involved by accident, but he did not want to be meddlesome, so he admitted his unluckiness. Just as Han Xiao turned around, wanting to leave the place with his hover boots, Vernina fired again. Clunk. A howitzer hit Han Xiao at the back of his head and exploded on the armor, pushing him forward. Han Xiao stopped in place immediately. The next moment, the armor wrapped around his entire body. Han Xiao turned around and dashed toward Vernina. He pulled out the retractable knife and dished out a quick stab. The electromagnetic hover boots were at full power, so the speed of his dash was like a bullet. Vernina hastily held up her grenade launcher as a shield. Screech! The dark black blade penetrated the grenade launcher. It cut the complicated mechanical structure inside and pierced into Vernina's abdomen, causing blood to drip onto the ground. Han Xiao's hands let go of the blade, and he launched his fist toward Vernina's temple. She hastily raised her arms to block. As the fist and her arm clashed, she felt an irresistible force of strength that hit her head across her bones. She then felt pain on her lower abdomen as Han Xiao kicked it. You forced me to do this. Han Xiao gnashed his teeth. I don't want to bother with you, and now you're taking it for granted. After taking a few ruthless shots, he was furious. Having been hit 2 times consecutively, Vernina was extremely shocked. She had thought that this agent was just a fish that slipped through the next, but it turned out to be an enormous shark. She was a legend in the old era, and now she was suppressed by an enemy that she had never heard about. The opponent seemed to have the intention of escaping a few moments ago and looked like he did not want to be involved but was pissed off by her 2 shots. Vernina was filled with regret. A slip of the hand had resulted in a confrontation with such a strong enemy, but it was not her fault. The intelligence showed that the guards of Durasi were all normal civilians, so she never could have guessed that one of them had been replaced with Han Xiao. She was truly unlucky. He's not pugilist, and not an esper either, he's a mechanic. Vernina was stunned, and she distanced herself hurriedly. Firearms were extremely powerful in her hands, even Mag from before would have to admit his defeat. Han Xiao did not intend to engage in a shootout. He did not bring sniper for this mission, only 2 berserk eagles and some small machines. Thus, he chose close-range combat by using hover boots to quickly close the distance and then to suppress the opponent with his strength. The dexterity of Vernina was high, but Han Xiao had an advantage in strength. Also, flighting Vernina at a close range would make the sniper cautious and hesitant to shoot. Chapter 188, Enemies Everywhere. The interface shows that Hans was LV-60, too. Han Xiao realized that things were more complicated than he had initially thought. 2 people at the maximum level in version 1.0 appearing at the same time definitely meant something significant. It might trigger a hidden storyline. Furthermore, these 2 people's names sounded familiar, but Han Xiao could not remember at the time. Han Xiao just wanted to focus on the mission from Bennett and make sure to complete it without any interference, but he was dragged into this matter, and being hit without fighting back was not his style. Han Xiao dragged the battle to a close-range fight. Although Vernina was a cannon master, the level of her agent subclass was very high, which meant she was not completely vulnerable in close combat. They exchanged blows again and again. Han Xiao was at an advantage because of his strength. He would never hold back because of the opponent's identity, gender, or age, so Vernina was at quite a disadvantage. Both of their physical abilities exceeded normal people. A swing of their hands was more than enough to break apart bricks and penetrate through iron plates. The environment around them was destroyed, and the ground became full of pits. There was even an overturned car that Han Xiao had kicked away toward the tree. It was a mess. Dorothy stood by the side, not daring to escape because of the sniper. Dorothy felt stupid. He had no idea there was such a strong superhuman hiding in his guards. Was this a secret arrangement of the secret services? But such a strong person would have been more than enough to even protect the highest ranked officials. Since when had he been treated even better than them? For now, Dorothy could only hope that this strong hidden person would be able to defeat the attackers, so he was extremely nervous. Han Xiao was like gangrene. Vernina could not distance herself away at all, and she became more anxious as time passed. This agent is way too strong. Their backup will arrive soon. I'm stalled. Hans, quickly help me. He is too close to you, and you're moving at a very high speed. There's a 50% chance I will hit you instead, Hans said. Vernina felt troubled. It was originally an easy mission, but with Han Xiao appearing, all the plans were ruined. The intelligence clearly showed Dorothy's guards to be normal people. Where did this guy jump out of? Hans quickly came to a decision. Retreat. It was at this time that the police sirens sounded. Police vehicles and the Special Operations Unit closed in at high speed, and the sound of rotors appeared in the sky. 2 helicopters were circling above. The place was surrounded from every direction, and they had locked onto the 2 people that were fighting each other. The emergency backup team had arrived. It had only been 3 to 4 minutes since Dorothy was attacked. They surely lived up to their team name. Vernina clenched her teeth and used her back to take 2 punches from Han Xiao, moved with the force from the punches, and dashed into the encirclement while enduring piercing pain in her organs. The people of Maple fired continuously. She was very agile, so she avoided the attacks by repeatedly sidestepping and found a safe route within the concentrated barrage. Even when she was hit, it only caused her single-digit damage. The damage from normal people using normal firearms posed next to no threat to her. As Han Xiao saw Vernina was about to escape the encirclement, he snatched a heavy sniper from one of the special operations soldiers, activated Flaming Will, and hit Vernina's shoulder. Blood splashed. Her footsteps stumbled, then she sped up again and disappeared in the darkness, leaving bloodstains on the ground. The majority of the team chased in their vehicles. Han Xiao threw the gun away, feeling much better. There was no benefit in chasing. Injuring the opponent was enough, and he could not kill her anyway. I'm on their side in Maple's people's eyes for now, but if I escape now, they might chase me too. Han Xiao's eyes twinkled. He decided to stay in place and find the opportunity to escape when the police officers were not paying attention. More troops arrived, and they started cleaning up the place. Dorothy was surrounded and taken care of by a doctor. From the conversation between the police, Han Xiao knew that both Vernina and Hans had escaped, which was expected. As he was leaning on a car, resting, a high-ranked officer walked in front of him and said in a low voice, "I'm Colonel Danny. You have done a good job, protecting Dorothy's safety and not letting the kidnappers get their way." Han Xiao continued putting up a show. He acted calm and said, "It's my job to do so." Danny looked at the street that was filled with pits, and slight shock appeared on his face. Anguston, joined the army 11 years ago, trained as a special unit soldier for 3 years, took part in 2 military missions, kicked out of the special unit due to disciplinary issues, and joined the secret services to protect government officials. Your history is very common, never showed the strength of a superhuman, he said. Han Xiao shrugged and said, "People are constantly changing." Colonel Danny frowned. This was a very serious issue. This Anguston had been hiding his real strength. His motive was very suspicious and had to be checked thoroughly, but right now was not a good time. Then, Dorothy came forward. "Good job, you saved me. I will let your superiors know about this and reward you for it." Dorothy knew that he had to keep a humble attitude after seeing Han Xiao's strength. Such a strong superhuman was not like any other normal soldier he could just command around. Han Xiao secretly observed Dorothy, thinking, what secret does this old government official have that interests 2 people that are LV-60? After Dorothy showed his appreciation, he looked at Colonel Danny with a straight face and said, What was the identity of the attackers? We are still checking. Oh, they have found it? Colonel Danny took the laptop from his assistant, but he was stunned with only one look. Vernina, former Raylan agent, currently decommissioned. She was once very active in the battlefields of the old era, was one of the shining legends of that era. She carried out more than 100 highly dangerous missions, including assassinations, protection details, infiltrations, subverting governments, and so on. Today was her first appearance in decades, and her threat level is determined to be the highest. If it had something to do with legendary characters of the old era, then it would more or less have some connection to Bennett. Oh, I remember now. Han Xiao had a flash of light in his mind. He now remembered where Vernina and Hans had appeared. It was in the middle of version 1.0 when players came into contact with these two names. They appeared in a form of something more like an Easter egg. In the biggest refugee camp created by Bennett in Han Xiao's previous life, there was a small hill that had 3 graves on it. 2 of them belonged to these two people. When players came into contact with them, they were already dead. Bennett would sometimes stop in front of the 3 graves, and if someone were to ask him about it, he would sigh and say he had buried his friends and comrades, all respectable people. Players only knew these 3 people were old friends of Bennett from what he said and nothing else. Some players had tried triggering a mission, but it did not result in anything. Apparently, it was just an Easter egg. But now, the 2 people in the grave were still alive. Han Xiao was certain there must be a hidden storyline. 2 of the strongest people at LV-60 from the same era as Bennett, why were they against a Maple government official? In the original storyline, how and what did they die for? Who killed them? Colonel Danny looked up at Han Xiao with suspicion. This person that he had never heard before had chased away a legend of an era. He was stronger than he had thought. There was such a scary guy hidden in Secret Service, and the military had not noticed. We'll have to investigate thoroughly, Colonel Danny thought. With such thoughts in his mind, Colonel Danny commanded the people to clean the battlefield, and within a short moment, Han Xiao disappeared from under his nose. Han Xiao activated Night Stalker's abilities as the attention of the people around him was diverted by cleaning up the battlefield. He walked to the corner and immediately changed his face and escaped. His level was much higher than everyone there, so as soon as he activated stealth mode, he was undetectable unless he lingered right in front of someone for a very long time. As soon as Colonel Danny had realized this, he quickly asked the people around him, but nobody saw Anguston leaving. He stood still in shock. With just a slight dip in attention, the person had disappeared. He commanded his people to search the nearby areas, which of course lead to no result. Not long after Colonel Danny was confused, someone found a real Anguston lying in the garden of Duracy's mansion. He then realized that this Anguston was a fake, and it was the same thing that the mystery person who infiltrated other mansions of the officials had done. The attacker's identity is confirmed, but who is the infiltrator? Colonel Danny thought with a heavy mind. The infiltrator was as strong as Vernina, so which organization did he belong to, and why did an ace-level power appear in the capital? Duracy was horrified and covered in cold sweat when he knew the truth. After all, it turned out the person that was protecting him was also an enemy that had been stalking him all along. 2 enemies actually fought with each other. It was like he walked past the edges of hell and ended up unhurt. How am I alive? Duracy was still panicking. Chapter 189, Fearsome Assassination. As the people of Maple were still investigating, Han Xiao had already returned to Duracy's mansion. He placed the last document in the study and left, swaggering. Deterrence and Threaten is completed. You have gained 120,000 experience. Plus 500 relationship with Blood Pack Society. Current relationship, Respect, 4450/6000. There was an affiliation between organizations. The Blood Pack Society was a subordinate organization of Darknet, so the relationship with it would also influence the relationship with the Darknet, just like how his relationship with Division 13 also affected the attitude that Stardragon had toward him. In order to unlock relationship with the higher tier organization, Darknet, Han Xiao guessed he needed an opportunity, like a mission or something. As the relationship with the subordinate organization became higher, it would start to affect the relationship with the superior organization. This was not a difficult mission. It probably also has some hidden benefits, like increasing my relationship points with Bennett. Han Xiao nodded. When he returned to the southern continent, he would become a partner of the refugee storyline. He was looking forward to it. After being busy for more than half of the night, Dorothy finally returned home, exhausted and protected by new guards. As he passed by the study, he realized that the desk lamp was on. He walked toward the study table and wanted to turn the lamp off, but then he saw a document on the table that he had never seen before. Dorothy's expression changed. He hesitated for a few seconds and started reading the document slowly. Inside the document were pieces of evidence of his corrupt profits and his unpleasant history, and it was shockingly inscribed by Darknet. Darknet sends our warmest regards. We wish you a healthy body. Dorothy's face turned green. He immediately understood why the Darknet did this. It could only be regarding the appropriation of supplies. He did not expect the Darknet to even find out that he was one of the people who opposed the appropriation. He threw the documents on the floor angrily, gnashing his teeth, and said, "How arrogant. This is blackmailing, a bunch of robbers. They could sneak into his house and place something, which meant they could take away his life. The infiltrator belonged to the Darknet. Everything tonight had been planned by the Darknet. But he did not dare plan revenge. If the document fell into the hands of his political opposition, his political life would be over. He would undoubtedly be abandoned by the people he depended on. Without protection from his political party, he would definitely be erased. As a government official, he was most clear with Maple's ways of doing things. Dorothy burned the document and melted down on the chair like he had lost his bones. He watched the document as it turned into ash in the fireplace, and he remained silent for quite some time. I can't let people know about this. I was not the only one that opposed the appropriation. The others wouldn't be stupid enough to spread it. Dorothy's eyes twinkled. If no one talked about it, no one would know, and it would remain a secret. As long as they agreed with the appropriation, Darknet would not take further action. However, things never turned out according to plan. One of the government officials whose house had been infiltrated was found dead, with his dead body hidden in the cabinet. This had immediately raised the importance level much higher. Secret Service agents locked down the official's mansion and investigated the entire house carefully. Han Xiao saw that the target died at the time. Therefore, he did plant the document. Of course, the intelligence team did not manage to find anything. They did, however, have a rough guess. 5 victims, but only one died. Why were the other 4 unharmed? What was the motive of the infiltrator? The intelligence unit asked the rest of the 4 victims, including Dorothy, if there were any abnormalities. All 4 of them denied it. However, the intelligence team had found a link between the 5 parties, which was their opposition to providing aid for the Darknet not long ago. The Darknet was the most suspicious. The infiltrator had battled with the legend of the old era, then disappeared into thin air. Maple Intelligence Institution immediately narrowed it down to the most suspicious person, Darknet's Black Phantom. Which meant that the 4 officials were lying, but why did the dead government official get killed? The doctor checked the cause of death. They did not find any injury outside or inside. The cause of death was a myocardial infarction and overflow of adrenaline. In short, he was scared to death. What did he see before he died to scare him to death? Did he see a ghost? What did Black Phantom do? The more they thought, the scarier it was for the intelligence agents of Maple. Such a fearsome way of assassination. Natural, no trace, godly disguise, unbelievable. The intelligence agents recorded it hastily. The toughness of Black Phantom was known by everyone in the underworld. It was almost impossible to find him. The intelligence institution of Maple could only do all they could, and they were already expecting their efforts to go to waste. Vernina sat bare top on the chair with her front facing the back of the chair. Her hands grabbed the chair back and placed her chin on the back of her hands. Hans was behind her, dealing with the wounds on her shoulder. To the side were cotton balls drenched with blood. Ding dong. Hans finally took out the bullet that was stuck in the muscles and threw it into the metal plate. The pain made Vernina frown a little. She sighed and said, "Such a shame. Can't believe I failed such an easy mission." Hans continued sewing the wounds without facing up and said, "Garion's information had errors. It's all his fault." Garion threw the laptop on the table as he heard what Hans said. The screen showed the files on the Secret Service agents around Dorothy. "Bullshit, this is intelligence I got from the database of Maple through very difficult and tiresome hacking. That strong opponent is called Anguston. Look clearly at his history. He is a totally normal person. Who would have thought he was hiding so deeply? Vernina put on a white cardigan and tied her golden hair up. With this failure, it won't be so easy to kidnap the target next time. That Anguston is not easy to deal with. Garion looked at the laptop. He suddenly turned happy and said, "Wait, I have new information. The person we fought was a fake. He did not belong to Maple at all." "Who was it?" Hans was surprised. "Seems like it's from the darknet," Garion said as he typed on the keyboard and hacked for intelligence. "Darknet? Only Bennett and 2 other old guys are that strong, but it wasn't them. There's new blood in darknet? It has been quite some time since I paid attention to the data from the underground." Vernina was slightly shocked. She touched her shoulder and said, "He also left a bullet hole in me. He is really not easily messed with. We have no conflict of interest with him. We just met him unluckily," Garion said. "And we met a strong one. Bennett has found a treasure. The fastest way is to ask." Hans took out his phone, selecting Bennett's number. The call went through. "Hans. Didn't expect you to call me. Didn't you retire already?" Bennett's voice appeared. Garion said that there was something important that he needed my help for, and I owed him a favor. "Never mind that. I have something to ask you. Did you send someone to Maple?" Hans then explained what had happened. Bennett didn't know to laugh or to cry. Such a coincidence. I don't know whether it's him being lucky or you guys being unlucky. "Who is he?" Bennett stopped talking for a second, then laughed and said, "Are you looking for trouble? I suggest you don't mess with him. He might kill you." Chapter 190, Hidden Main Storyline, 1. Fighting him was an accident. "You know me, I won't take revenge." Hans shook his head. Garion cut in and said, "Let me guess, he is the recently active Black Phantom? He's the only newbie worth mentioning in your organization." Hans froze in place. He started thinking and said, "Turns out it's Black Phantom? I've heard of him, although I retired and don't pay attention to freshmen. He's quite tough. Seems like you've got yourself a great warrior, Bennett." Bennett kept silent. Just as Hans said, he also felt that he had found a treasure. Back when he first met Black Phantom, his code name was still Mr. Black, and he was only a scorpion. He had been quite strong but still very far from top tier. He had also seemed like Bennett's fan and gave Bennett some presents that suited his taste. Thus, Bennett had given him some guidance, but it was only a random act, and he did not take Han Xiao very seriously. However, within a short few months, Han Xiao had shaken the underworld with his battle record and become one of the top 10 killers and an undoubted ace of the Blood Pack Society. The speed that he grew at surprised Bennett. Although they had not battled with each other, Bennett could feel the strength difference between him and Han Xiao decreasing at a very fast rate. With Black Phantom's potential, sooner or later, he would become someone that could share the responsibilities with him so that he did not have to do everything alone. Black Phantom's partnership with the Darknet was at the honeymoon stage, so Bennett paid a lot of attention to it. "Since he's one of your people, I want him to help us do something," Hans said. Bennett rejected and said, "Black Phantom is not my subordinate, and I cannot command him. The most I can do is help you ask, but it still depends on his response." Hans pondered and said, "All right, I would like to talk to him myself." "That can be done." The call ended. "You want to let a stranger join us?" Vernina said with surprise. "Although he's strong, we know nothing about him." "He's very strong. What's bad about having another person assist us? We don't need to keep what we're doing a secret anyway." Garion was the initiator of the mission, and he completely agreed with what Hans wanted to do. "We're digging for a big secret, and 3 of us is not enough. I have been collecting intelligence for many years and have finally found some leads I need to know no matter what." "One day, you'll die of your curiosity," Hans said with a heavy heart. As the sun began to rise, Han Xiao returned to the Darknet safe house. Golden Fox and Ghost Blade had been awake for the whole night. Seeing him return, Golden Fox breathed a sigh of relief. "Is the mission completed?" Ghost Blade questioned. "Did you follow my plan?" "Your plan wouldn't work." Han Xiao shook his head and briefly described the challenges he faced during the infiltration. Ghost Blade's intelligence had missed out some details, and these were very important details. After what Han Xiao said, Ghost Blade noticed there were errors and flaws to the intelligence that he had collected, despite him thinking it was as detailed as it could be. He felt shamed as Han Xiao pointed out the details that he had missed. Ghostblade had originally been very confident of his precise plan, but he realized that following the plan would not have been enough to deal with the sudden changes of situation. Yet Han Xiao improvised on the spot and completed the mission seemingly with ease, like it was nothing. The difference made Ghostblade feel defeated and embarrassed. But he realized that Han Xiao had no intention of blaming or insulting him, rather, he did not seem to care about what he was thinking at all. Ghostblade was completely ignored, plus, having been slapped in the face by reality, he felt even more embarrassed. Whether it's taunting or respecting, he doesn't care about what I think, Ghostblade thought with discontent. It felt like he was provoking someone, but that someone treated him like air and completely ignored him. It was like punching a cotton ball. Furthermore, with their difference in position and strength, he felt his actions were even more laughable. Being ignored felt horrible for Ghostblade. It was like he was just an extra, and he felt like something was clogging his heart. Although Han Xiao did not know about the change of attitude from Ghostblade, he was able to guess it. It was probably nothing more than arrogance and doubts, then getting slapped by reality and feeling embarrassed. Han Xiao's heart was completely unaffected. Everyone's mind was different. Whether it was childish or crazy, everyone would have thoughts that were way out of line. But as long as they did not act on it, it would forever be a secret. Therefore, the great Han Xiao did not care about the thoughts and emotions of others that would be more meaningless than a pair of spectacles without lenses. Whether Ghostblade doubted or respected him, it would not affect his emotions even for a little bit. There was nothing that described this characteristic of his better than the phrase doing things his own way. This was the legendary calming aura. Golden Fox licked her bright, tender lips, and her emotions were complicated. The first time she saw Black Phantom was in the Manor Defending mission a few months ago. Black Phantom had just been a scorpion back then. His rank had been even lower than hers. But in a few months, she was still in the same place, while Black Phantom had climbed up in a short time to be an ace of the Blood Pack Society as well as made a connection with the superiors of Darknet. Golden Fox envied Black Phantom's position, but she knew she did not have what it took. If she could sacrifice her body to have Black Phantom back her up, she would definitely do it, but it was too bad that Han Xiao had no interest in her. She tried to be understanding, but what was up with men being weird? Not bothering with the puzzled Golden Fox, Han Xiao opened the safe and took out the equipment that he had previously placed inside. There was no need to stay in Maple now that the mission was done. As he was getting ready to leave, his phone rang. It was Bennett. Han Xiao picked up the phone. I have completed your request. There were some small accidents along the way, but I was overall stable. I knew you wouldn't fail. I have something else for you, Bennett said. The enemy you met in the middle of the mission was actually my friend. You might have heard of them before, Hans and Vernina. They are from my era. Han Xiao acted surprised. Oh, what a coincidence. It's surprising that you didn't lose. You were much weaker when I first met you, Bennett said in awe. The speed you're improving at has surpassed my knowledge. Are you calling just to compliment me? Han Xiao said. Go on, don't stop. I can still endure it. With twitching lips, Bennett took a deep breath and calmed his emotions. Hans has asked me to tell you that he wants your help. Regarding the conflict earlier, it was just a misunderstanding. Wants my help? Han Xiao's eyes twinkled. He realized that this was a mission that came to him without him looking for it. Or to put in a more direct way, he had met the requirements of triggering the storyline. He had legendary points and sufficient relationship with the Darknet, and he was friends with Bennett while his level was high enough. Therefore, the hidden storyline had come to him. Legendary points and relationships with organizations had their benefits. Sometimes, NPCs would come looking for the player and task them with a mission. These missions were usually more difficult than usual, but they also rewarded generously. Missions coming to the players and players looking to trigger missions everywhere were treated very differently, just like the difference between seeking help from others and others seeking help from you. Therefore, players favored attributes like legendary points that could give them a very good gaming experience. I could help them, but I need to know the details. Han Xiao thought for a second and added, since they are your friends, they are my friends too. Don't worry about that small conflict. This sentence made Bennett feel very good. He laughed in a very reserved way, but he could not hide the fact that he was feeling comfortable all over. Since Han Xiao had given him so much respect, he would return the favor. Count it as me owing you a favor. Hee. Seems like I owe you quite a few favors already. Chapter 191, Hidden Main Storyline, 2. There's no rush to return the favor. Just don't forget about it, Han Xiao joked. Every time Bennett owed him a favor, their relationship points would increase. Being in good relationship with one of the main characters on the planet would definitely be quite beneficial. Triggering a hidden storyline without actively looking for it was clearly one of the benefits it had brought. Bennett's relationship network was very wide, so one could go through Bennett to get in contact with many others, most of them being strong ones with missions that had a chance to be triggered. After waiting for a while, Bennett transferred Han's call. Koch in. They both kept silent after the call was connected. They could only hear the sound of each other breathing. In the end, Hans spoke first. I'm Hans, we have met last night. Bennett had told me. Heard you need my help. What's it about? Han Xiao got straight to the point. It's regarding a secret that was buried in history. We have found some traces of it, and I want to find out about the secret. Han Xiao was very confused. He had no idea what secret he was talking about. However, a notification showed up on the interface. Han Xiao could not move his eyes away from it the moment he saw it. He was completely shocked. You have triggered Planet Aquamarine's hidden main storyline Grade A mission New Era Origin. Remarks, this mission will cause unknown and irreversible effects to some events and organizations. Please consider carefully before choosing to accept or reject. Han Xiao's eye immediately widened. A main storyline mission that no one ever triggered. There were 3 main storylines in Planet Aquamarine. 2 of them were the war between the 6 nations and Germinal organization and the creation of the refugee camp, and another hidden main storyline was triggered by the players, but it was not it. He had completely no recollection of it, which meant this mission had not been triggered by the players in his previous life. Hidden main storylines were a special type of mission. They needed an opportunity to be triggered, and they would impact the other main storylines and change the plot in one way or another. Han Xiao had played through many versions in his previous life, and he had read about hidden main storylines on the forum before. Without exception, they all impacted the main storyline missions of their civilization or planet in a profound way. The first time Hans and the guys appeared before the players, they were already dead. No wonder no one triggered it. Han Xiao suddenly realized how dangerous this mission was. Even 2 people at the maximum level for Planet Aquamarine had died. It would probably be much more difficult than he thought. Han Xiao's Grade A mission against Germinal organization Fall of the Germinal was a branch of the main storyline mission. Players in different organizations would receive different main storyline missions. For the 6 nations, it would of course be to destroy the Germinal organization, but for Germinal organization, it was the other way around. However, Han Xiao's mission was special because he did not belong to any organization but was Germinal organization's enemy. Thus, the requirements and details were different, but the main goal was the same. However, he knew nothing about this hidden main storyline mission. Origin. Does it mean to dig into the history of the planet? In that case, which event's origin is this? The unknown was feared, yet people were curious about it. Han Xiao felt an itch in his bones. It was the feeling of excitement and anticipation. He was an extremely long-term player that loved to dig the important factors in Galaxy, and this was a secret that no player had found out about. Accept. You have accepted New Era Origin. Plus 10 relationship with Hans, Vernina, Garion, and Zhang Yuan. Han Xiao noticed something. He knew that Zhang Yuan was the last person buried in the grave, but who was this Garion? Talk to Hans. Listen to his introduction. The mission requirement at the moment was only this. Han Xiao was used to it. It was something like an opening cinematic. It has something to do with us attempting to kidnap Dorothy last night. He took part in a secret plan some years back, and this secret plan of Maple is one of the leads. There are many secrets in the nation of Maple. When you infiltrated the government officials' mansions, didn't you feel anything strange about these officials being protected around the clock, 24/7, though this is not the case in other nations? Han Xiao nodded. I know about this, the Ulrich assault from many years ago. Yes, the Ulrich assault. Hans described the event in detail. Ulrich's position in Maple at that time was similar to a prime minister. He had been attacked at home, not by a few people, but a large group of civilians who somehow had weapons from an unknown supplier. They used gunpowder weapons and burned Ulrich's expensive mansion to the ground. Ulrich, his wife, and their 3 children aged around 10 years old were brutally slaughtered by the attackers. The entire process was recorded and uploaded online. It shocked the nation and even the entire world. The reason for this was that Ulrich approved a policy that was basically to remove power and citizen benefits from the civilians and to use it as an investment of a ridiculous project, which was actually a way for Ulrich to put money into his own pocket. Corruption of the government officials in Maple was known throughout the world, but before the War of the Old Era had broken out, Maple had been known for their gentle government. They were normal and not a strong nation. When the Old Era War broke out, the government implemented policies that put a lot of pressure on the civilians. Most people showed understanding and accepted the policies under more of that same pressure, and some even actively contributed. The government officials of Maple had tasted the delicious fruit of evil. After the war ended, because of the pressure from the nation losing power after the war, they did not go back to the old easygoing policies. Instead, they continued to pressure the civilians with tax and labor, which was used to recover the nation's power. Conflicts within the country became worse as time passed by. The gentle society environment disappeared and never returned. People who were not living the life they wanted were like a spring that was pressed to its limit. The policy Ulrich approved was the last straw. Then, half an hour after Ulrich was attacked, the special force received a command to kill everyone who took part in the attack. They showed no mercy. The nation was shocked, and this signified as the opening of the change of times in Maple. If this had happened before the Old Era War, it would have been a scandal that could cause the complete downfall of the government. But in the new era, where power was left unchecked, the other 5 nations had no intention of getting involved. It was already difficult for everyone just to protect themselves after the war. Organizations that protected human rights and power alliances no longer existed. The structure of the world changed. The balance was broken, economies were close to collapsing, resources and military power became the only standard to measure a nation's power. Maple felt that the civilians' feelings did not matter anymore, so they did not serve the citizens like before. In their eyes, it was time for the citizens to serve the nation. The old era was over. With everything being destroyed and waiting to be rebuilt, it was a chance to reshape the country, so they chose a radical way of doing it. The assault that shocked the nation also alerted the government officials of Maple. They decided to retrieve the weapons from the civilians. The government officials had never been this united before. They approved 24 strict policies with high efficiencies within 2 days. The 24-hour protection of the officials was the most basic policy, and there were even insane ones that graded civilians, which led to rotten meat being evicted from the big cities every so often, rotten meat being citizens deemed worthless. Thus, the effects of the assault went down a weird path. The Maple government announced that the attackers were not ordinary citizens. There was a reactionary group in the nation who planned the attack. Their weapons were the best evidence. The Maple government listed dozens of lame pieces of evidence. With the justifying excuse of capturing the reactionary group, they started to use force to take back the power that they had given to the civilians, pressure the reactionary group, deal with anyone who might be a threat to the nation, then lock the information down. They wanted to turn civilians into a completely controlled labor force. Chapter 192, Hidden Main Storyline, 3. The way Maple dealt with what came after the assault became the biggest scandal of that year, but with strong military power, they completed the reshaping of their country and built a nation with a completely different style. People were slotted into the bottom of a pyramid, and there were close to no ladders between classes. The citizens saw no hope in life, they were just waiting to die. Those with power were not born with it. Under high pressure, a real reactionary group had formed, but it was not the cold weapon era anymore. The standard of weapons that the nation had was like a wall that could never be scaled. If there was no external interference, it was almost impossible for anyone to overturn and take over the government, and Maple regularly removed people who posed a threat to the nation. Thus, the citizens had turned from being terrified to being numb. The assaults were started by a few violent citizens venting their rage, and it ended in more citizens bearing with the consequences, which perfectly described the case of hitting a rock with an egg. It caused the society of Maple to be reconstructed. It became a dictatorship, and the ones on the top had complete control. The root of a gentle government changing was war. The high pressure from the war caused the government to collapse under stress, and they had no choice but to direct the pressure to its citizens, which then got out of hand. This was just like how it was easy to go from being poor to being rich but difficult to go from being rich to being poor. Citizens were the cornerstone of a country. Just like the parts of a machine, when the national machine needed these parts to overload, they would wear out and break quicker than usual and sacrifice the best time of their lives. But as long as they changed the parts to new ones, the machine could still function. The broken parts were replaceable, and the parts that were thrown away became vessels of an era. Han Xiao was interested. He quite liked the history and stories of civilizations. After Hans finished, Han Xiao contemplated for a while and asked, "What does this have to do with the secret you talked about?" "What I wanted to say is that the war had changed a lot of things. I have been through that darkest and most chaotic age. Many were controlled by ideas, missions, and honor and turned into a tool for killing while still thinking they were doing an honorable thing. Only a few woke up from this, such as Bennett. He became a hero, but an era that needs a hero is never a good era. The end of the war was filled with dirty conspiracies that were buried as secrets, and we want these secrets to resurface." Han Xiao raised his eyebrows. "And what benefit does this bring you?" "Nothing, but the people of this world have the right to know what they went through and not let these conspiracies stay hidden to become a secret that never gets unveiled. I don't think the original construct of society would shatter within a night just because we got in touch with galactic civilizations, and I don't believe a so-called internal conflict would cause wars. There has to be someone behind all of it. Every country has its secrets." "It's nothing unusual," Han Xiao said. Han smiled and said, "Since we have come to the new era, the world should also look different. The rules are changing. Why follow the old logic? Also, I owed a favor to someone who has a very strong desire to gain knowledge. He suggested this mission, and I joined in." From his tone, seems like they are anarchists. "They died in my previous life. This mission seems rather complicated." Han Xiao stopped asking questions. He considered for a while and decided to join them. No matter what reason they were doing this for, this was a very rare hidden mission, so it would be a waste to reject it. Hans requested to meet up. They were both in the same city, so with Hans leading the way, Han Xiao soon found their safe house. They met and started observing each other. Han Xiao looked past Hans and Vernina, then stopped at Garion. He was most curious about this person. As he was observing the trio, they were looking at him. "So, this was the legendary Black Phantom. You are pretty strong," Vernina said with a calm tone. "Although we just met today, I owe you a favor for coming to help," Hans said. "Plenty of people who owed me favors. Welcome to the party." "What do I need to do?" Han Xiao asked. The three people looked at each other. Garion took out a deck of documents and said, "The evidence is within the intelligence of the past few years. I spent a long time finding a lead. It is very cumbersome, so we need to divide our labor." As Han Xiao browsed the documents, his expression finally changed. New Era Origin. This mission is a series of chain missions. You can complete the targets below. Ending of the Survivor. In the Blade City of Raylan, find a guy called Old Devon and get the incomplete copy of Sully number 485 document. The Key of Misplacement. In the capital ruins of the West Mountain Nation within the southern continent, coordinates, find a misplaced important item attachment item appearance. This was the end result of West Mountain Nation's last research before they were destroyed. Sealed Past, control the warlord, Verna, of the Verna colony on the western continent, coordinates. His father was a high-ranked military officer of a dead country. There are hidden clues. Follow Verna and find the secret. Mysterious prisoner. Decades ago, an intelligence agent of Stardragon was imprisoned by a country. That country is already dead, but the intelligence agent was kept in a secret prison that had no guards. No one has found him. Find him or his relics, coordinates of the ruin. Same type of person, a loner who has secluded himself in the wilderness has some very important information. Intelligence shows that he appeared near the Tribute Valley in the western continent. Be careful, he is not a normal person. He was active on the battlefield of the old era. It is recommended you engage the contact with friendliness, Zhang Yuan. This is the first round of the mission. As long as one of the missions are completed, the mission can be concluded. The amount and completion status of the missions will determine the mission requirements of the next round. Reward, S, of the first round, 350,000 experience. Bonus rewards given as per evaluation of the missions. Han Xiao raised his brows. The freedom of this kind of mission was very high, similar to the series missions of an organization, but this main storyline was clearly more cumbersome, and it was a chain mission. The completion status of the previous round would affect the mission requirements of the next round. This mission is extremely open. Every round has different clues that will lead to different endings. Usually, the more targets are completed, the better it is, and the higher the evaluation will be. Han Xiao had completed this type of mission before, so he knew that there were many possibilities. It was like walking a maze. In order to find the exit, one had to gain as much information as one could, and with the ending of Hans and the others, this mission posed very high risks. The rewards of the mission did not bring shame to main storylines. Just the basic reward of the first round was already 350,000 experience, and the bonus rewards were very likely to be items, abilities, or talents. But the mission was too cumbersome. The location spanned across 3 continents, so it would cost him a huge amount of time. No wonder it was an A-grade mission. Han Xiao tightened his brows, feeling a little distressed. I will try it. No matter what, he needed to accept it first. Garion nodded. I will count on you for these missions. The 3 of us have other missions. Hans and the rest were all very strong characters from the old era, so their mission was definitely not simple. Han Xiao decided to let the Darknet help keep an eye on it. After getting the mission requirements, Han Xiao left the safe house. So, is he trustworthy? Vernina asked. Hans shook his head and then nodded. We don't know much about him. Let's see what he will do for now. The documents I gave him have real and fake information, Garion said. It was only 1/10 of the clues I had, so it will be best if he can complete them. If he has other thoughts, we won't lose anything. It is just some unconfirmed intelligence anyway. He is a friend of Bennett, so he should be trustworthy. Chapter 193, Tease. This hidden storyline seems to have something to do with digging into this planet's past. Logically, it shouldn't result in a big impact, but since it's the main storyline, could it be that there'll be some shocking secret that'll be dug up? Han Xiao thought as he walked on the street. No matter what secrets there were, it was not his mission, and there were enough chances for him to explore it, but of course, the rewards were the most important part. Since the mission in Maple was completed, Han Xiao left that very day. The threats that he had issued had resulted in the local intelligence institution carrying out a hidden investigation throughout the city, but because of the godly assassination of a government official, the investigation was very thorough. Because they were in the same organization, Han Xiao brought Golden Fox and Ghostblade as he retreated. Ghostblade was unwilling at first, but the situation was severe, so he had to compromise. Ghostblade did not like the feeling of being protected by someone, so he was sulking most of the way. After successfully leaving Maple, Han Xiao separated from the duo and rushed toward the cargo plane toward Farian without stopping. The players in the novice villages of the western continent were still waiting for his arrival. The forum had exploded. The players that were waiting for Han Xiao panicked and were worried that he would not be coming anymore. They started being superstitious and spammed posts in the forum to pray for Han Xiao's arrival. The posts reached the astonishing number of 300,000. It was so terrifying that Han Xiao was worried that he might be buried in the sea of players. Some of the players started to play with memes. Youngster, did you drop this black phantom, this white phantom, or this yellow phantom? You're an honest child. To reward you, you can exchange your money to learn skills. SHHH, look at what I found, there's a black phantom that is different from the others. We can try to capture it. One black phantom could provide us with energy for many days. But it is not easy to deal with. We have to quietly close in from its back. Ah, I've been discovered. Help, it wants to eat me, run Calvin. Black Phantom used Gaze of Dread. It was super effective. Finally, after tens of thousands of summons, the great mechanic Han Xiao arrived at a novice village. The players waiting for Han Xiao there were countless, many more than any previous novice village. The moment he appeared, players rushed to him over like an avalanche. People who did not know better may even have mistaken them for a swarm of locusts. Han Xiao looked at the level of the players. They were at an average of level 10. The hundreds of top-level players on the forum have already reached LV18, Maple Moon was one of them. With the help of the great mechanic Han, she had been the biggest winner of the prize pool. However, other players also had their own opportunities. The number of people at the same level was not small, but most of them were players from other countries on other novice planets. Planet Aquamarine was the base camp of China's esports clubs, but the number of their players at the top of the level leaderboard was the lowest. It was quite a pain for Han Xiao. Disappointing. Come on guys, buck up. Then, he looked at the countless players in front of him, pondered, and said, what's the use of leveling up fast? Being able to fight is the way to go. Nothing wrong with that. Only players from big guilds that were climbing the level leaderboard would be rushing their levels without upgrading their abilities. Other players would not be doing the same. Even though leveling up was fast at the start, it would be slower as their level became higher. With the experience quota, Han Xiao had to think about the missions he gave out. If he wanted to cultivate one player, he could make that player grow at a much higher speed than anyone else, but he would not do that, at least not before the players reach LV20. Before LV20, energy training technique had a lot of market potential, so it was extremely profitable. Han Xiao taught abilities as usual, and the players came swarming. Gaining experience points in Novice Village was also a way of relaxation for him, so he had time to browse the forums. On the forums, the popularity of the now currently named Inhuman phenomenon was over the top, and not only on planet Aquamarine. Similar situations had occurred on other planets too, and players received different treatments. On the wizard planet, they were researched by the witches and were discovered to have a very high talent for sorcery, which was in fact the learning ability on the player interface. They then shockingly joined various sorcery academies. On the ancient planet, they were seen as messengers of God and worshipped. On the Ice Winter planet. Oh, the players in the Ice Winter planet were the safest. The devil species had no interest whatsoever in their unique characteristic of being able to revive after death, and when the players saw the spaceships of the space devil species dash through the universe, breaking apart any meteors surrounding the planet for resources with their gravity-capturing devices, they all understood why the reaction of the devil species was so normal. To the extinguished army, the strength of the players was like an ant. Who would care about what an ant looked like? Of course, there was also the possibility that the devil species were used to seeing the ability of revival. No one knew for sure. It was all just speculation anyway. The planets above were all very lucky, but planet Aquamarine was one of the unluckiest planets. NPCs were very fearful toward the players. The players were captured, experimented on, sliced to pieces, and brainwashed. They were treated like slaves. Players being filled with hatred was a certainty, and with the situation on planet Aquamarine, the players had new speculations. Black Phantom was probably a compensation from the game company and producers. No wonder. That's why a character like Black Phantom only exists on our planet. Luckily, there is Black Phantom. If we didn't have him, we would have nothing to play with. Seeing comments like this, Han Xiao smiled. His efforts did not go to waste. As he saw the expression in the players' eyes, he smiled even brighter, looking like a farmer who was looking at his happy harvest. The Inhuman phenomenon on planet Aquamarine had arrived at a key stage. All the organizations were contacting the players. Some of them were using a soft approach like Stardragon and Hesla, there were also some that went for a colder approach like Raylan and Ordina. Other militaries and financial organizations were taking action, too. It was not all bad for the players, at least they had the opportunity to join an organization without having to run everywhere, and that was exactly what the players did, with the 6 nations having most players joining them. In Han Xiao's previous life, the Germinal organization had lured in the most players, but now, their bases were all destroyed, and they could only capture players in the local area of their headquarters. It was pathetic. Their player count was reduced by approximately 80% compared to his previous life. The Inhuman phenomenon also led to another change. The players developed a hobby of teasing the NPCs. They became very curious and asked a lot of questions, and they liked to do things that were out of line, just wanting to see the reaction from the NPCs. Players had a lot of fun, but to NPCs, they were acting extremely weird. All the organizations did one thing at the same time. They added one line to the Inhuman documents. Most Inhumans have a mental illness. Their actions are very random, and they might do anything. They cannot be judged with a normal mindset. Han Xiao did not know to cry or to laugh when he saw this line on the dark net. There was another line that made him burst into laughter. With research, the Inhumans have gender, but they do not have genitals and reproductive abilities. The game did not allow players to get naked, and from the NPC's perspective, it was like their underwear was part of their body, which was very incomprehensible. Han Xiao was laughing uncontrollably. He could imagine how the organizations found out about this. Unable to reproduce, which meant that Inhumans were not a new species. Of course, there was a possibility that their way of reproducing was different from what the people on planet Aquamarine knew about. There were also all kinds of speculations about the Inhumans on the darknet, with various emotions like terror, nervousness, and many others. Han Xiao noticed the once abandoned religion seemed to have rejuvenated. They claimed Inhumans to be messengers sent by God to save the world. Some players had the thought of teasing Black Phantom. Since Black Phantom was the guider of new players, would he also be shocked like the other NPCs? Teasing an NPC was a fun thing to do. Black Phantom, your name is Han Xiao, you served Star Dragon before, and you are now a member of the Darknet, am I right? A player named Flying Naughty Prawn suddenly said. He had seen the video from Bun Hit Dog and had an interesting idea. He wanted to expose Black Phantom's identity right in front of him and see what would happen. There was no way for Black Phantom to know that his identity was exposed. When he saw a stranger stating his true identity, would he be shocked and lose his cool? Flying Naughty Prawn was staring at Han Xiao while snickering. Chapter 194, If you are going to scam people, scam them for as much as you can. The rubbernecking crowd all looked at Flying Naughty Prawn with respect. This guy really is a courageous warrior who lives for trouble. Then, they all stepped back simultaneously. They stood further back so that they would not be splashed by the blood. Han Xiao knew where Flying Naughty Prawn had gotten the information from. This was an impact of Bun Hit Dog's video. To expose some information and increase the curiosity of the players toward his identity and to increase his fame, this had gone through his consent. The tiny amount of information exposed was of no importance to Han Xiao. The players were not like the NPCs who had a large intelligence network. Without the key information, it was completely useless to know his real name. Instead, the more viral the video became, the stronger his impact grew. Therefore, Han Xiao had guessed long ago that there would be players who would ask him directly, so he calmly replied with a hum then kept silent. Flying Naughty Prawn was confused. It did not go as he imagined. How is Black Phantom so calm now that his identity has been exposed? Does Black Phantom not care about strangers knowing his identity at all? Or, is Black Phantom's identity actually not a secret at all in areas that players don't know about? This plan didn't work at all. Flying Naughty Prawn was very discouraged. Black Phantom was too steady. It was like he did not have a weakness and could not be teased at all. The crowd looked at each other, becoming even more curious. What kind of person was he? Flying Naughty Prawn did not give up. He continued to look for trouble and asked again, I want to join the Germinal organization, do you know how can I do that? Everyone knew that Black Phantom was against the Germinal organization. Thus, he asked that on purpose. Yo, are you provoking me, youngster? Han Xiao immediately deducted 3 relationship points as punishment. Flying Naughty Prawn's face turned green. Isn't this reaction too straightforward? That was completely unexpected. Han Xiao suddenly had a new idea. With the influence he had on players, maybe he could guide them on choosing a side to join. So, he paused and said, a war is going to break out. The 6 nations will come together for an expedition. The Germinal organization will certainly lose. If you want to commit suicide, do as you wish. If you want to join the Darknet, I can write a referral letter for you. If you want to join the Germinal organization, get out of my face. The crowd got excited. Black Phantom had given a different reaction, and he had even said information that none of them knew. They started chatting with each other. Expedition? The 6 nations and Germinal organization are going to war. He knows much more than we do. His judgment is definitely reliable. Then joining the Germinal organization would be quite a loss. The players created a commotion. Only players in Andria had joined the Germinal organization. Han Xiao's words would very soon be sent to the forums, and those who were planning to join the Germinal organization might also change their mind. He did not want to give up on any chances to harm the Germinal organization. He had not bothered them for a while, and they seemed to be having a rather peaceful time. Unacceptable. Players noticed a keyword in Han Xiao's words. He said the Darknet. That's a hidden organization, isn't it? Can he really help us join the Darknet? Han Xiao smiled, opened up the store interface, and added a new item. Referral letter, unlocks the Blood Pack Society. Remarks, the Blood Pack Society is a subordinate hitman organization under the Darknet. Price, 250,000 aquamarine dollars. 250,000. The crowd was stunned. This was a sky-high price for them. Nobody could afford it. Originally, to join the Blood Pact Society, there needed to be a few rounds of mission tests, but Han Xiao had gotten rid of all that. With his relationship with the Darknet, introducing some players into the organization was a piece of cake. A few months ago, when Han Xiao bought the Blood Pact Society certificate from Antonio, it had cost 200,000. He had used that as a basis and increased the price by 25%. He felt it was a reasonable price since inflation also needed to be considered. With such a high price, normal players would not be able to afford, but Han Xiao was not planning to sell a large quantity. He was targeting the pro players from esports clubs who could afford the price with the backing of their guild. Pro players were the ones who were most willing to become stronger by any means necessary. This strategy would attract pro players, which was beneficial for him in expanding his group of spare tires. Of course, most importantly, it was to earn money. It's not enough to only have inexpensive and high-quality normal items. There also needs to be a few luxury items with a sky-high price to enrich my store structure, Han Xiao thought. 250,000 aquamarine dollars was a price that none of the guilds could afford at the time, but they were rich and could use real money to purchase aquamarine dollars from other players. Now, let's see how many guilds will realize the benefits of joining a hidden new organization. He was now Fisherman Han, waiting for people who were willing to bite the bait. Unbelievable, the most expensive item by far. Black Phantom, Germinal organization will certainly lose. Posts with such titles appeared in the forums of Planet Aquamarine, and it immediately attracted players' attention. When they saw the sky-high price of 250,000 for the referral letter, they were all shocked, speechless. Wow, is this organization made of gold? Blood Pact Society, no idea what they do. The price is outrageously high. What's so special about this organization called the Blood Pact Society? Anyone had heard of this organization before? This person was just asking randomly, but someone unexpectedly replied, I triggered the mission to join the Blood Pact Society. It is very cumbersome and difficult. The introduction of it is that it's a killer association, and the benefits are still unknown. However, to me, it's not worth it to spend 250,000 just to skip the prior missions. The outrageous price of 250,000 caused a wide discussion. The average value of a player at the time was about 3,000 to 5,000, so it was not difficult for guilds to gather 250,000 since the number of players was increasing continuously. However, most of the guilds didn't feel it was worth it. Buying an organization referral letter for 250,000 was too luxurious. The situation was not clear yet. They decided to wait and see. Han Xiao had quite an influence on normal players, but guilds had always been very logical, considering everything with the benefits they could earn. Other players were playing a game, they were running a business. Compared to the outrageously priced referral letter, players paid more attention to the information Han Xiao shared about the war between the Six Nations and Germinal organization. They were in an uproar. After playing the game for a few days, players on Planet Aquamarine all knew that the conflict between the Six Nations and Germinal organization was the main storyline, but war broke out when nobody expected it to, an expedition even, which proved that the battlefield would be in Andria. Many players at the time had yet to even join an organization, and their strength was far from being enough to join the main storyline mission. In the original storyline, war would only break out a few months later, and every continent played a part in the battle. Thus, players from everywhere had been able to join in. But with Han Xiao's interference, not only did the war break out much earlier, it also became an expedition. The impact players had was minimized from what Han Xiao felt. Most importantly, most of the players had yet to even trigger the main storyline mission between the Six Nations and Germinal organization. Black Phantom said that the Germinal organization would certainly lose, which made many players hesitant to join them, but there were also some players who preferred the evil organizations and wanted to join the Germinal organization. However, Han Xiao's influence played its part. More players became hesitant. If they were to join the Germinal organization, there was the risk of getting beaten horribly, then they might as well join the law-keeping organization of Six Nations. With just one sentence, the Germinal organization lost many potential supporters. The influence that Han Xiao had on players grew as he maintained his image, and his position in the players' hearts grew stronger. The things that he said would become important information for the players. Chapter 195, Bundled sales are so damn great. I should always use them. Translator, Atlas Studios Editor, Atlas Studios. Han Xiao had seen the impact that the leaked information had brought on the forum. It was just as he had expected it to be. He had successfully sabotaged the germinal organization secretly again, and they did not even know who was doing it and what went wrong. Doing evil things to the germinal organization secretly made him feel really good. However, the referral letter was not popular. Han Xiao was somewhat surprised, but after he contemplated for a while, he realized the reason behind it. It was because of the current financial situation of the players. Although guilds could come up with 250,000, it was quite a risk for them. If the referral letter did not have a good effect, it would slow their progress down by a huge portion. The price that he had set for the time being was too high, and the risk of buying the referral letter would only decrease when the average asset level of the players increased. At that time, there would be guilds that would try buying it. At this price, the first person to eat the crab will take too long to appear. Han Xiao bit his nails and started pondering. The best solution was to lower the price. That's impossible. Not going to happen. I could use some sales strategy, giving out other benefits together with the referral letter. The first thing Han Xiao thought of was giving relationship points as a reward, such as when someone bought a referral letter, he would give some relationship points. Relationship points were the prior requirements of buying high-level equipment in his store. It was all part of the profit chain. But on second thought, giving relationship points would not be a very good idea. They were maxed at 100 points, so he had to treasure them. The relationship points that he gave to normal players were 10 at most. He did not want the players to get them so easily. If he used them with the referral letter, 1 or 2 points would be too few and unattractive, but giving too many would be disadvantageous to him as well. What about giving bonus equipment? The moment this thought came up, it was rejected by him. He had to be a qualified businessman, so he should never have such good morals. He had fused some blueprints recently, but he had not built any of them, so he could not sell those either. And in terms of drugs, it was not a good time to sell them. Some drugs that gave enhancements based on percentage would have a much bigger market once the players reach a higher level. The pro players who had to compete in matches would be his target consumers. As he was wavering, a surprise notification appeared on the interface. Source of Stone Plague completed. Requirement 1, find the source of the plague. Completed. Requirement 2, suppress the spread of the plague. Completed. Requirement 3, cure all the people who are infected. Incomplete. You received 60,000 experience, plus 400 relationship with the Black Pine Colony. Han Xiao stood in place with surprise. This mission was what he had given to Frenzied Sword and Bun Hit Dog. They had completed it. It seems I chose well. Han Xiao laughed. Their level was around 15, so this mission would have been quite difficult for them. Although they did not complete it perfectly, it was already a pleasant surprise. Since Han Xiao had not been involved in this mission at all from the beginning, the rewards dropped from the sky. Wait a minute. Han Xiao's eyes sparkled. He was inspired and had another idea of promoting the referral letter. Nice one, Frenzied Sword. Han Xiao laughed. It was just the right time for the mission to be completed. It had inspired him at a crucial moment. At this time, the players in the novice village were learning energy training technique one by one and were swing at the price of the referral letter. The flow of time carried everyone forward. The truth of the past has been buried and forgotten by the people who never stopped, Han Xiao suddenly yelled. I need a number of trustworthy people to help me with some things. As he was speaking, he distributed the 5 hidden main storyline missions from New Era Origin that he had just received into new missions: Ending of the Survivor, The Key of Misplacement, Sealed Past, Mysterious Prisoner, and Same Type of Person. New Era Origin was too cumbersome, and it would waste a lot of time if Han Xiao did them himself. Furthermore, it was only the first round. Han Xiao decided to distribute the targets of the missions and let the players do it. This way, he could save time and get the rewards without doing much. The success of Frenzied Sword proved the idea, and he found out that he could still get the rewards even if the players completed the mission. Just like the evil capitalists who used benefits to attract others to work for them but still ended up earning the most. Furthermore, Han Xiao stated clearly that this was a main storyline mission, which would increase his status among the players again. An NPC that gives out main storyline missions. Damn, he has got to be someone important. Was what Han Xiao expected the players to think. The players saw the mission and froze in place. Then they became overjoyed. Main storyline mission. God. This is another main storyline. The rewards are plenty. Quick, accept the mission. However, the players noticed that the mission was in gray color, which meant that it could not be accepted. Why can't I accept the mission? Why? The confusion was solved within a short period. They soon realized that the missions had a prior requirement buying the referral letter. That's too greedy. The players turned furious. How are they going to pay 250,000? Who the hell could afford that? Seeing the expression of the players, Han Xiao smiled secretly. Because of the quota, his main storyline mission could only be given to a limited number of players. Thus, he had to target the elites, so he had decided to attract the pro players. Pro players had large guilds behind them, and it was perfect for promoting the referral letter and making bundle sales. You want the main storyline mission? Okay, buy my referral letter. Don't want to spend money? Then why do you deserve to become stronger? Pro players were willing to grow through any means, they would never give up the main storyline missions. Another reason Han Xiao was doing this was that there was a chance for the normal players to fail the mission, which would result in him also failing the missions. However, pro players had higher skills on average, and they had guilds behind them who would help them with the mission. Clearly, they were more reliable. Those that were rare were those that were treasured. He also added another important line in the mission introduction, which was that there was a chance to earn Black Phantom's favor. This was an obvious hint that accepting the mission might trigger his hidden storyline. Frenzied Sword, Bun Hit Dog, and Maple Moon were not attractive enough as examples. Very few highly skilled players came. Maybe it was because they felt triggering hidden storyline required luck, therefore, they did not take it seriously. Han Xiao decided to go for a strong approach, to let the highly skilled players see that there was a way with a higher chance to trigger Black Phantom's hidden storyline. This is a good strategy. It's killing many birds with one stone. Han Xiao was satisfied. Even this won't attract you. I doubt that. The forum had a chat room function. At this time, there was a room with a password that had people joining in continuously, and the notifications kept popping up. Jade Green Sky entered the chat room. Jupiter entered the chat room. Morning Snow Twilight Frost entered the chat room. Your Mom Collapses When I Cry entered the chat room. About a dozen people entered the chat room. They were all chair people of famous guilds in China, and they formed a circle themselves. Is everyone here? Mountain Rain, the chairman of Drizzling Rivers Guild, spoke first. Nope, your mom collapses when I cry said. The chairman of Nine Gates Guild, 3 times 3 equals 9, asked, where's old Qi? Did anyone invite him? Never mind, he spams all the time. We would never get things done with him joining in, Cowherd Star, the chairman of Chrysanthemum Guild, said. Who opened the chat room? What serious matter are we talking about? Jupiter asked. Jade Green Sky cut in and said, Yo, isn't this the rich house of esports? I heard you have not been running your God squad well recently. Lousy chairman. When you step down, I will light firecrackers in front of your club doors to celebrate. At Jupiter. Foo *K off, Jupiter snapped back. Morning Snow Twilight Frost sent a funny smiley face. At Mountain Rain, Rainy Kim of your thunderstorm has been quite active lately and always goes on TV shows. Can you help me ask for a signature? Your mom collapses when I cry asked. 1 for 3,000, no negotiating, Mountain Rain answered. Damn, are you robbing me? Can you have some morals? Cowherd Star cut in and said, my signature is free, do you want it? Go away, your signature is not even worth enough to be used as toilet paper. I could consider if it's from Lady Yao Yao. At 7 colors of a pepticord A1. Stop insinuating. She's not even here. Cowherd Star was upset. Morning Snow Twilight Frost sent a funny smiley face. Stop talking nonsense, let's talk about the matter, I'm very busy, Jupiter said. You're basically a mascot, Jade Green Sky sneered. Go away. Okay guys, I will pull us back to the topic, Mountain Rain declared. You guys have all seen the posts in the forums about the main storyline missions from Black Phantom. Yes, we saw it, what are you saying? We should come up with the money together. Then we let the pro players accept the main storyline missions from Black Phantom. You want to share the risk? But only one person can accept each mission. No, what I mean is that the pro players can form a team to complete it. It's positive competition. That sounds pretty good. I will have to ask the expedition group for their suggestions, Jade Green Sky said. I'm in. There definitely won't be any objections from the club, Cowherd Stars said. I'm fine with anything, smile, responded 3 times 3 equals 9. Haha, I remember the pro players of Guild of Gods is all in Southern Continent. They can't meet Black Phantom. You can't play with us at Jupiter. Quickly kick him. He's a spy here to collect intelligence, Jade Green Sky mocked. You motherfoo. Jupiter has left the chat room. Morning Snow Twilight Frost sent a funny smiley face. Google is suggesting that this should be Pentacard, is that right? Chapter 196, it's the Tanabata festival tomorrow. I'm upset. Han Xiao was about done with harvesting the players in this novice village. He smugly counted the experience he had gotten, a huge amount yet again. However, nobody had bought the referral letter so far, but Fisherman Han was patient. Him giving out main storyline missions had already made a storm on the forums. Sooner or later, someone would come. One last novice village left. Maybe I should delay it a while so that these large guilds have enough time to raise the money, Han Xiao thought. This time, 2 players walked toward Han Xiao next to each other. Their IDs were Wind Chaser and Dragon Tail, which attracted the attention of other players. They were rather famous players of the Nine Gates Guild and the Fanatics Guild. Han Xiao's eye twinkled. The highly skilled players have finally come. Black Phantom, we want to buy the referral letter, Wind Chaser said. Sure. Wind Chaser and Dragon Tail had received the funds from the guild of their clubs. A team was the face of a club, so as pro players, they were treated well. They took out 250,000 each. The players around looked at them with envy. They had never seen such a large amount of money. Can't believe someone can actually afford it. Large guilds are really rich. No wonder pro players are stronger than us. If I had such resources, I would be able to go pro, too. You think just anyone can be signed by a club? If we rob their money, we'll be crazy rich. Don't be stupid. Putting aside the fact that a pro player would completely skunk you, even if you succeeded, the guild will chase you everywhere, or maybe Black Phantom will kill you first. The crowd talked among themselves. He received 500,000 in one shot, then wrote the referral letters on the spot and gave them to the 2 pro players. He told them the location of a darknet stronghold in the Western Continent and said, take my letter there, and you can join the Blood Pack Society. He paused and then said, seems like I can trust you. I have some tasks here. Would you like to help me? That's what I've been waiting for. Dragontail immediately accepted the mission. He wanted to accept one after another but was notified that only one mission could be accepted. This had been set by Han Xiao, 1 referral letter for 1 mission. Shit, only 1 mission can be accepted. I thought I could accept all of them. Dragontail was unhappy. Han Xiao raised his brows and said, leave it if you don't want to do it. Dragontail shut up. If he did not accept the mission, the money would have gone to waste. Wind Chaser had no choice but to choose the same mission. The 2 clubs behind them had joined forces to do the mission as a team. Luckily Dragontail accepted a mission that was in the Western Continent. If you can complete the mission, there might be more things you can help me with. Han Xiao hinted that in order to unlock his hidden storyline, first they had to complete this mission. Pro players were always in a rush. They left immediately after accepting the mission. 5 mission targets, 2 in the Western Continent, 2 in the Northern Continent, and 1 in the Southern Continent. He had to make sure they were all accepted by someone. Fortunately for him, all these continents were part of his schedule. Although the main storyline mission was A grade, this was the easiest first round. Han Xiao separated the mission targets into many smaller missions that had a difficulty of around grade D, so the single mission experience quota could suffice for the experience he was rewarding. In the later rounds, when the difficulty becomes higher, my quota might not be enough by then. He felt that he needed a way to increase his quota. Leveling up was not an option at the moment, so he had to go for organizations and legendary points. There was no need to think about these at the moment. Wind Chaser and Dragontail were normal pro players, and they didn't have a very good battle record in my previous life. I shall observe for now. Han Xiao was strict in choosing his spare tires. He was not going to choose every pro player. Fanatics and Nine Gates posted about their players buying the referral letter on the forums, which was a promotion of themselves to increase their fame within the players. The huge amount of money that they had spent attracted many players' attention, and they were all amazed at what they had done. Han Xiao's face also showed up indirectly because of the advertisement from these two clubs. The clubs that followed after would also mimic the same action so that they did not lag behind. Han Xiao guessed that his face would probably appear many times on the forums. Without stopping, Han Xiao came to the last novice village in the western continent. As he was harvesting experience, there were other pro players that used the funds from their guild to exchange for a chance to accept the missions. Normal players could only watch and envy from the sidelines. Another mission in the western continent was also accepted by a pro player. Han Xiao could finally relax and happily sell his abilities, at the same time paying attention to the forums and the dark net. New episode of Galaxy Times. Titled, Creation of the Professional League. Han Xiao felt wide awake. He had always paid a lot of attention to this show, so he clicked in immediately. Hello players, the male host greeted. This is Galaxy Times, dedicated to sharing first-hand game information. Your gaming career is our top priority. Spring, I have been quite anxious recently, the female host commented. What's wrong, Autumn? I fell in love with a man. He doesn't speak much, and he's so handsome, but he's never looked at me seriously and never talks to me. Don't worry, I think you two suit each other very well. Female host was surprised. Really? Of course, he's handsome and cool, you're short and ugly, how suitable. It was the awkward opening joke again. The style felt very nostalgic to Han Xiao. The screen was filled with comments. A lot of players watched Galaxy Times. In less than a month after beginning, they had already become the go-to show for the players. After all, they had the official background, so they had a lot of first-hand information. They chatted for a while to bring up the atmosphere. Then, the male host said, all right, let us get back to our main topic. In today's show, we will be digging deep into the most popular topic, the inhuman phenomenon, news from pro players, and we also invited Li Ji to be our guest. Be sure to stay. The contents of the show were interesting as always. They started off by going through the progress of players in all various planets while giving some comments on the level leaderboard. Currently, the highest level players are already closing to level 20. Level 20 will be the first class advancement, so I wonder who will receive this honor. The first player to receive a class advancement will be recorded in the books of gaming history as a milestone. As everyone can clearly see, the players on the top of the leaderboards are mostly not pro players. The Japanese players have the highest number of players on the list. As everyone knows, their base camp planet is the Lani planet, where technology and magic coexist. They are at the peak period of the civilization, which is very suitable for getting missions and leveling up. There are also quite a number of players from France and America while there are not many from China. Oh, I see someone I know. Maple Moon, do you guys remember? Not long after the official launch, she received more than 100,000 experience points, which was from the first prize pool mission the players have seen. Speaking of the Black Phantom, from the beginning of the game till now, he has been the center of attention for the players in Planet Aquamarine, and recently, something has happened again. He continuously appeared in novice villages to give out guidance and rewards, and not long ago, he showed another main storyline mission, but it had a prior requirement of buying an item that was priced at an outrageous amount of 250,000 aquamarine dollars. If players from other planets want to know how much this means, please move to the currency exchange panel, and look at how many resources can be purchased with 250,000 aquamarine dollars. Players from other planets envied Planet Aquamarine. Why did they not have such a great novice guider? Chapter 197, Responses from All Sides, 1. The male host changed the topic. Recently, an event has raised wide discussion among the players. The NPCs in the game have expressed extreme curiosity over the unique characteristics of players. Every planet has witnessed different reactions and labeled this phenomenon differently, such as Chosen Ones, Inhumans, Genius Phenomenon, which was very exciting and surprising. It's like NPCs have their individual minds and are not as rigid as NPCs in other games. If every NPC has an individual mind of their own, The amount of computation needed will be extremely high, but Galaxy is using the latest light-speed computers. Its limit is unknown, the female host said. Players wrote their speculations in the comments. The fact that NPCs seemingly had their own intelligence and interacted as freely as a person would in the real world was very new and exciting. The hosts read from their scripts. They talked about the situations on various planets and made some speculations. From the player's perspective, they only knew the NPC's attitude toward them and not the responses from the organizations, but Han Xiao did. Recently, the information on the darknet had almost all been about the contact with Inhumans. The rapid increase in the number of players had given a lot of pressure to the organizations. All the organizations agreed that, if the number of Inhumans grew continuously without a limit, it would bring endless potential dangers and subversively impact the current social construct, but they could not find a way to suppress that growth at all. Luckily, Inhumans were weak and easy to control. The organizations in Planet Aquamarine had yet to notice that the strength of players was growing at a very fast pace. Before they were LV-20, their power was still in the category of normal humans. Han Xiao shook his head. When the level of the players is high, these organizations are going to be really shocked. The topic of the Inhuman phenomenon had ended. The male host said, "We have invited Li Ji to join us today." "Good to see you, Li Ji." Li Ji, the god-tier player that ranked second in China, sat between the hosts with a smile on his face. Galaxy Times frequently invited highly skilled players for an interview and discussion, so the female host asked Li Ji what his view on the Inhuman phenomenon was. "I think this is part of the game's plot, to give the players a feeling that it is real. When I was playing, I kept having the misconceptions that I was in a real world, and I think that is what the developers want us to experience. As a unique character in a real world, everything that occurs required improvisation, and there will almost never be any repeated events. It's all new and exciting. I have high hopes for what Galaxy can achieve in the future." Talking about the future of the game, the male host said, "Our channel has received first-hand news that the International Esports Association has confirmed that they will be hosting the first ever Pro League, and they have also informed the countries to host competitions. What is your view on this?" "I would say that it means I have yet to lose my job." Li Ji laughed. On a serious note, strong esports clubs have all stepped into Galaxy. They will definitely be preparing for it, and I think it will be a great fight. Hopefully, I can lead China to a good result. The comments exploded again. The players were very excited about the creation of pro leagues. It was going to be a big event. There were also other comments like Li Ji is so handsome, and love you hubby that came from the female fans. The competition has been established, and pro players will have to quickly prepare for it. Do you have any advice or tips that you can share with us? Li Ji thought for a while and said, "We pro players have to distribute the experience points logically in our abilities in a way that suits our strengths best. Therefore, we stick to a steady pace and won't rush our levels so that we can familiarize ourselves with the controls in every level and improve our skills, which is why there are almost no pro players in the level leaderboards." "Oh, there are a few from Japan." "Well, as you know, they like to show off," he mocked lightly. "We pro players will grab every opportunity to become stronger. Black Phantom in our planet Aquamarine has become very famous recently. I think I'm going to try my luck too, but that's if he returns to the southern continent." Li Ji sighed. The rest of the show was mostly chit-chat. After he watched finish the show, Han Xiao thought, "Pro leagues are going to start soon. All the clubs will be preparing themselves and not wasting any time. My customers should be increasing." Li Ji, a god-tiered player that ranked second in China, someone whose status was so much higher than Han Xiao in his previous life that Han Xiao was not even qualified enough to be in contact with him, had said that he would come to find him. But now, Han Xiao had the power to choose if he wanted him to be one of his spare tires. Li Ji: "I'll have to think about it." Frenzied Sword and Bun Hit Dog did missions in Black Pine. It was not a place for high-level players. The missions were difficult, but Frenzied Sword was a pro player after all. With his skills and the equipment that he had received from Han Xiao, he was having a good time and grew rapidly. Through the missions in Black Pine, Frenzied Sword had received new equipment and new abilities, but these things could not fill his heart. Instead, he felt empty inside. When he thought of Han Xiao, his heart would be filled with desire. Only by following Han Xiao could he understand the true meaning of life, and the missions in Black Pine paled in comparison. When will he return? Frenzied Sword was melancholic. Outside the isolation zone in Black Pine, Lu Chen was talking to Frenzied Sword. Honestly, you have surprised me. You actually suppressed the plague. Frenzied Sword was upset. Bun Hit Dog pulled him to the side, and only then did he come back to focus. Yeah, he replied perfunctorily. In the beginning, when Black Phantom had left the two of them to deal with the plague, Lu Chen did not take it seriously at all, but not long after, he realized that these two people really could be of huge help. The characteristic of them being able to revive meant that they were unafraid of the infection and could do many things the researchers did not dare to. The plague in the colony stopped spreading with the help from the duo, and the lightly infected patients were already cured. The number of people in the isolation zone had visibly reduced. Lu Chen has always been surprised by the characteristics of Inhumans. He had told the people of Green Valleyville to research these homeless wanderers. He contacted his friends from other organizations and knew that the Inhumans phenomenon was happening everywhere in the world. As the Inhumans area of activity started to grow, even the Six Nations could not keep the secret from the civilians. As the level of players increased, players from novice villages started to explore the map slowly. Many left Green Valleyville, and some of them came to Black Pine. Lu Chen did as Han Xiao taught him to, which was to treat the Inhumans like mercenaries. He noticed that Han Xiao had surprisingly pointed him down the right path. Rewards. Bun Hit Dog reminded the distracted Lu Chen. Frenzied Sword glared at Bun Hit Dog. During the mission, he had done almost everything. Bun Hit Dog had just spent the whole time recording from the side like a boss, and yet he had the guts to ask for rewards. Lu Chen laughed and told his subordinates to pass the agreed rewards to the duo. Frenzied Sword carefully read the details of the pieces of equipment that he had received. With the creation of the Pro League, he had felt more pressure, so he improved on his skills as much as he could during his free time. But Bun Hit Dog did not care. He browsed through the forums, then suddenly, he said, "There's news about Black Phantom. He can give out main storyline missions, how come he never brought it up to us? We triggered his hidden storyline, so why aren't we getting at least the same treatment?" Frenzied Sword's expression tightened, and he said in a low voice, "When he returns, he will definitely give the main storyline missions to us too." Where did that confidence come from? Bun Hit Dog questioned. Frenzied Sword was at a loss for words. He was rather anxious, but he comforted himself with a firm expression and said, "I believe in him." Chapter 198, Responses from All Sides, 2. Translator, Atlas Studios. Editor, Atlas Studios. In a military base in Star Dragon, many players crowded around as if attending a mini fair on a bright, sunny day. Star Dragon's approach toward the players was gentle. They held many internal meetings and tried to command the players. They realized that other than some Inhumans being mentally ill, they were capable of normal communication. They decided to put the players together as a special division and made them serve the military. This military base was specially created for the players. Commanders from Star Dragon gave out missions, and many players were opening stalls and grouping up. The whole area seemed to be prospering. Impacted by Han Xiao, many players chose to join the Star Dragon, including Maple Moon. Fighting and killing was not Maple Moon's style. She liked to collect materials and build machines then sell them to other players. Many players liked coming to her for supplies and repairs, so Maple Moon could easily find a team when doing her missions. Maple Moon was just a casual player. The time that she spent online was less than other players. Plus, she preferred to enjoy the game more than doing missions all the time, so she wasted a lot of time by doing that. Even so, with the prize pool rewards that she had received from Han Xiao, she still surpassed most of the players and became one of the players on the level leaderboard. Maple Moon looked at her experience bar and excitement showed on her face. Almost level 20. I will be able to find Black Phantom very soon. A piercing cold wind blew across the wasteland with thin snow. Together with the ground, they created a view filled with gray and white. In a wasteland on the northern continent, a player with an animal skin coat slowing trekked across in the cold wind. On the horizon behind him was the novice village that he had left from. With blood scabs on his fists, 7 dead frost wolf bodies lay 100 meters behind him. Frost wolves were a common predator in the northern continent. Their level was around 10, so players at the time had less than a 20% chance of winning under the siege of 7 frost wolves, but there were only a few shallow scratches on this player. The ID above the player's head was Hao Tian, which was clearly an old ID. Hao Tian, a famous pro player, a pillar of the Long Sky Club, and a veteran in the pro scene, had used this ID for many years. There were many esports clubs in China, but only a few were considered top tier, such as Guild of Gods, Long Sky, Dynasty, Fried Eggplants with Fish. Yes, that club was called Fried Eggplants with Fish, and their mortal enemy was the Kimchi Club in Korea. Hao Tian suddenly received a ranged communication request from Li Ji, so he stopped and accepted. This greeting clearly conveyed the fact that Hao Tian did not like to talk too much. Have you heard that the Esports Association has confirmed the creation of Galaxy Pro competitions? Li Ji asked. Oh. What class did you change to? Pugilist. I'm an Esper, Li Ji said. Level up quickly. The situation of the Chinese players is not looking good. I need help from people to fight top clubs from other countries. Speak for yourself. Hao Tian did not give face at all, and he hung up. Both were top players, their styles were very different. Hao Tian had been in the pro scene for many years. He had steadily trained and climbed up to where he was. He did not like to talk, did not like to manage public image, all he did was shine in the competitions. Li Ji was very passionate about managing his image. He often went to shows, so he had countless more fans than Hao Tian. Plus, he was handsome, so he had many female fans. Li Ji was the type of player that was talented enough to surpass other players without much hard work. Every pro player had their own talent, and Li Ji was full of talents. Some people are just that talented. Many people admired Li Ji, and many envied him. Hao Tian was not one of those. He had known Li Ji for a very long time. Li Ji was just someone who succeeded in the same industry as him and nothing more. He did not care for other factors. Li Ji was his old rival. Hao Tian lost to him many times, and in order to reach a higher place in Galaxy, he spent almost all of his time strengthening his in-game character. He did not want to miss any opportunity. He opened the forum as was his habit, then saw the posts about Black Phantom giving out main storyline missions. He suddenly stopped walking and turned back around toward the novice village. With Hao Tian's skill, a novice village was already useless to him, but for the missions of Black Phantom, he was willing to wait. In the basement of the Dragon Horn building, the headquarters of Division 13. The corridor toward the central computer room was dark and metallic, with infrared detectors in the walls all along the corridor. The ground was equipped with devices that recognized and recorded weight and footprints. Gu Hui typed the password at the door, then had his eyeball, fingerprint, and voice scanned. Within a few seconds, the center computer recognized Gu Hui through the floor and infrared detectors. Identification authorized. Welcome, Deputy Director General, a robotic voice emotionlessly said. All the security devices were turned off. The path was clear, and Gu Hui walked into the spacious center computer control room with a serious expression. He was carrying out the order of the highest rank superiors inquire about the inhuman phenomenon from the galactic civilization far away in the universe, Godara. It was an important issue. All the cameras in the center computer room faced him, and the leaders were watching through them. Gu Hui knew that it was not only Stardragon, all the other countries were going to do this as well. The inhuman phenomenon was too weird. They had absolutely no way of solving it and could only seek help from galactic civilizations. Godara was the only superior civilization that they were in contact with. It had a mostly neutral but slightly biased attitude toward them, and they did not interfere too much with planet Aquamarine. Gu Hui turned on the central terminal and typed a series of long passwords to unlock the encryption. He then opened the deepest layer of the program and typed another string of secret passwords, activating a secret program. The screen turned entirely white, then a new simple window popped up. It was filled with countless options and links in weird Godaran symbols. All except one were gray, which meant they could not be selected. The only one that could be selected was translated into Planet Aquamarine's language. Godaran communication window with Star Zone 9, Planet Aquamarine. This was a Star Zone communication device model called Feathers of Light 8. All of the 6 nations on Planet Aquamarine had received it from the Godaran civilization. It allowed them to connect with the galactical civilizations. This technology was yet to be obtained by Planet Aquamarine. The Godaran civilization locked many functions of the program and closed the hundreds of connections on the network. It was limited to only single-directional communication from Planet Aquamarine. Thus, Planet Aquamarine could only make use of less than 0.000000001% of the galactical communication device, and they could only get information about the universe from Godara. But Planet Aquamarine did not have a choice. Gu Hui calmed his mind and clicked the link. The 10-second wait felt like hours, but eventually, the screen flashed, and a dialogue window appeared. A sentence in the Godaran language appeared before it flashed into Planet Aquamarine's language through the translation function from the device. Human from Planet Aquamarine, why did you request communication? Gu Hui revised what he had planned to say before typing it out word by word. My friend from Godara, I'm the person in charge of the intelligence organization of Star Dragon on Planet Aquamarine. I have requested the communication due to an abnormal phenomenon on our planet. We call it the inhuman phenomenon. The details are as below. Gu Hui explained their research on the Inhumans briefly and sent the documents and records over. Then he ended his message with a brief plea for assistance. As our technology is unable to find the reason behind this, we hope you could help us to solve it. If you can provide assistance with this, we will give you our sincerest appreciation. Godara and Star Dragon will forever be close friends. Chapter 199, Aurora. Translator, Atlas Studios. Editor, Atlas Studios. After a few seconds, the person from Godara replied. There are many technologies that can achieve this effect. It also might be a natural occurrence. There are far more weird events in the universe, so don't have to be so surprised. Tens of thousands of species die and come to life every second. We would have to research on it ourselves to know the exact cause. That is what we are hoping for, Gu Hui wrote back, for you to send someone here to do field research. Request authorized. Current date, August 10, 688 Galaxy Time. Mission has been submitted into the schedule. ETA May 7, 689. Galaxy's calendar was set by the three biggest civilizations. It is used across the entire universe, but of course, many places had their own calendar, just like the use of dialects. The general calendar would usually only be used in the communication between two civilizations so that time calculation would be easier. So long. Gu Hui was stunned. Every activity follows a schedule. The request needs to be queued. I have already received the request from other nations on your planet, so it will be settled at the same time. The reply of the receptionist from Godara was typical. Gu Hui felt it was quite familiar. He thought about it and realized. Isn't this the same tone as government officials pushing things around? Gu Hui turned off the communication with a sigh. Have to wait 1 year. Who knows how the inhuman phenomenon will turn into after 1 year? Gu Hui shook his head. Luckily, the Inhumans are able to communicate and are passionate about being mercenaries. They are controllable to a certain extent. The highest ranked superiors of Star Dragon hosted a meeting. Since there was currently no solution to the inhuman phenomenon, they decided to immediately focus on declaring war with the Germinal organization before the phenomenon grew worse, to prevent the Germinal organization using this phenomenon as a tool for them making a comeback. Preparation for the expedition war started again. Ta, ta, ta. The military boots stepped on the metal floor. Hyla walked in the corridor full of twists and turns with an expressionless face. She did not even hesitate at the intersections. She was too familiar with this place where Aurora was locked up. At the end of the deep corridor, a thick, metal gate blocked Hyla's path. She walked over with light steps, and the automatic guarding guns kept their aim all on her like they were going to open fire at any moment. 2 guards stood in front of the metal gate and stopped Hyla. I have authorization. Hyla's tone was cold. The guards turned around and tapped a few times on the control panel, made sure that Hyla had received one-time authorization from their leader, and nodded. You have 1 hour. He opened the metal gate. Light shone from within and brightened the exquisite but ice-cold face of Hyla. A pure white room came into her sight. It was very simple, 1 bed, 1 table, 1 chair, 1 toilet, and 1 bookshelf full of books. In a bed as pure as the feathers of an angle, a tiny, scrawny body cowered. Hyla walked forward inattentively and stopped 5 meters outside the room. She reached out and pressed against the glass that surrounded the room. She could not move forward anymore. The corner of her eyes shook. The palm pressed against the wall turned into a fist. She clenched her fist so hard that her bones started to turn white. Sis. The blanket started moving. A tiny bald head extended from within cautiously. Her face was pale like she was suffering from malnutrition and had not gotten enough sunlight for a very long time. Her eyes were flashing with surprise as she saw Hyla. Aurora lifted the blanket and stumbled toward the glass. Her steps were weak and powerless. She was only as tall as Hyla's shoulders and so skinny that she looked like she only had her skeleton left. The exposed arms from her patient suit were full of needle scars. Aurora pounced toward the glass with happiness. She put both of her hands on the glass and said, "You've come to see me." Hyla hastily extended her hands and pressed against Aurora's palms across the glass. She endured the lump in her throat and softly asked, "Recently, have you been all right? The people in white lab coats have not come as often. The last injection was 13 days ago already." Aurora's large eyes blinked, and she showed a faint smile. Hyla smiled reluctantly. She looked at the needle scars on Aurora's body, and it felt like her heart was being stabbed rapidly. She knew why they drew blood from her fewer times. It was because Aurora recovered slower. Every time her blood and bone marrow was extracted, she needed more time to recover. Her ability allowed her to feel one's life force. The life force of Aurora, which had once been as bright as the sun, was now a candlelight that might extinguish any time. Her life force was withering. Aurora sat down and hugged her knees. "Tell me stories, elder sister. I want to hear the last one that you didn't finish." Hyla sat down too and leaned on the glass. "Where did we stop at last time?" she whispered. Aurora tilted her head and thought about it. The uncle called Zero escaped from the base. What happened next? Did Sis fight with him? After a moment's thought, Hyla continued the story with a soft and gentle tone. In the office of the leader of the germinal organization, a row of superiors stood in front of the desk and reported the various situations in the organization. The leader sat straight and tight. No one knew what the expression behind the mask was. His black gloves-covered hands overlapped each other under his nose. The inhuman phenomenon has attracted the attention of the 6 nations, but it won't last for long. At least the Inhumans made some time for us to recover. Be prepared, the enemy may invade Andrea any time, he said. The officers nodded in assent. The leader looked around and asked, "Where's Cyberlos? There have been breakthroughs in a few projects recently. He's busy." The leader stood up suddenly and left with large steps. Electrolux was so touched that he was tearing up. After a month-long ordeal, he was finally released. It had not been easy. Although he was trapped in prison, he had been paying attention to the forums, and he knew that the germinal organization had captured other players as well. After he was released, he was sent to join a special unit consisting of players. It was called the Inhuman Unit. It was all the unlucky players whose organization was locked due to being brainwashed. Although he was far behind on levels, Electrolux was confident that with his Esper ability that had A-grade potential, as long as he leveled up, he would definitely be stronger than other players. A non-Chinese on-planet aquamarine player like this was not uncommon. Some casual players did not care which planet was whose base camp, they only chose novice planets to their likings. Every novice planet had casual players from various countries. It was Cyberlo's idea to put the brainwashed Inhumans into one unit, and it had been accepted by the leader, who felt that undead Inhumans had a strategic value in war. The leader had assigned a battle instructor to specifically design training and actual combat plans for the Inhumans. At this time, Cyberlos was in another research lab. He stood in front of a specially designed sealed pod. The research personnel on the side were steadily adjusting the devices. There was an test subject in the pod, and a scream filled with madness and agony could be heard from within. After some time, the inside of the sealed pod quieted down. Its gate opened, and what was inside could be seen. It was a man fully armed with all kinds of exoskeleton mechanical parts that were connected into his bones. His skin had all changed into a soft, stretchable metal. With his bald head and machinery everywhere, his body size had grown a considerable amount. He looked like a beast. This guy was none other than the first test subject of the Super Soldier Project, number 1. Chapter 200, More Than 100 Million. Translator, Atlas Studios Editor, Atlas Studios. How do you feel? Number 1 opened his eyes. His eyes had been modified, too. They flashed red light, and his field of sight could zoom in and out like a camera lens. He looked down at his palms covered in metallic skin, and as he moved his fingers around, a hideous smile appeared on his face. Never been better. With a buzz from the exoskeleton, he punched at the metal wall and created a pit. His hideous smile expanded and turned into a maniacal laugh. Finally, after enduring endless pain, he had gained transcendent power. He enjoyed the surge of confidence. Number 1 realized that with this power, the Zero that had once killed him was nothing more than a weakling. They were not on the same level anymore. Zero, don't get killed by anyone else before I find you. No one's eyes were vicious as he talked to himself. You're mine. Cyberlos walked out of the experiment lab to report to the leader. As the schedule has been brought forward, the experiment has yet to reach a mature stage. Number 1 was the only one that could endure and finish all the modifications. I did not think that he could endure all that torture, Cyberlos said. He was killed by Zero. Hatred turned his will indestructible, the leader said indifferently. About Zero, Cyberlos narrowed his eyes. If he really has the power to predict the future, we have to get rid of him before the war. Otherwise, all of our strategic deployments and planning will be exposed. He's like a rat in the sewers, hiding too deep. The leader fiddled with his fingers before coming to a decision. Activate Destiny's Child, find his position. Cyberlos smiled. He had always been very interested in the Destiny's Child. The duo walked in the twisted corridor and past locked gates that each required higher authority than the last. Elite teams of guards patrolled the corridor in synchronized footsteps. The secret room was deeply hidden. The leader walked to the gate and entered the password. Next was the fingerprint scanner. He removed the glove that he had always been wearing. His hand looked horrible. It was full of scars like it had once been bitten and chewed by a beast. There were scars on his fingertips, too. The leader put the glove back on after the authorization was completed. The metal gate slid open to the side. Only the leader could open this gate. Inside was a hibernation pod with a man wearing a metal muzzle in it, and the nutritional liquid injections were all that was keeping his body alive. The leader controlled the hibernation pod to inject a drug that would wake the person inside. The door opened up, and the man slowly opened his eyes. He was extremely calm. His eyes had no signs of life, and he did not seem to care if he was asleep or awake. The Germinal organization called this man Destiny's Child. He had some ability to affect the future with his words, but the Germinal organization did not know many of the details. The leader waved behind his back, and his subordinate handed the documents on Zero over. He then flipped the pages. Destiny's Child looked at the pages without even changing the focus of his pupils. The leader flipped through the pages twice and said, "Make him appear." Destiny's Child finally blinked. The leader took out a specially made key and opened the metal mouth mask of Destiny's Child. Destiny's Child closed his eye for 5 minutes. When he opened them again, he said slowly with a hoarse voice, "He will come here himself." The leader's breath paused for a second and demanded, "When?" "Not too long. Hope it's successful this time." Cyberlos shook his head. Destiny's Child's ability did not work every time. The smaller the request, the more likely it was to succeed. The leader put the metal mask back on Destiny's Child and pushed him back into the hibernation pod. The guards outside carefully extended their heads and looked at each other with confusion. Why were the leader and Cyberlos talking into the air together like that? After staying in the last novice village in the western continent for 3 days, Han Xiao left hurriedly in a plane. His next stop was the northern continent, which would be a long trip. The average level of players was getting close to 20, so Han Xiao had to speed up on his schedule. Stars filled the night sky outside the window. The plane flew stably in the clouds with its preset route. The stars glowed in the clear eyes of Han Xiao. Every time Han Xiao looked at the night sky and the bright stars in it, he thought of the countless civilizations and opportunities that existed in the universe. Han Xiao was very aware of this, and every time he thought of it, he was filled with ambition. A man's journey belongs to the sea of stars. He had already built his base on planet Aquamarine. This was the starting point. The more he accumulated here, the more confident he would be. Han Xiao opened the interface and counted his earnings. In the more than 10 days that he had stayed in the western continent, he had robbed a large number of drugs, one of which had an unknown effect but could potentially be a very valuable semi-finished drug. He had also built many relationships, with Dion, 2 superheroes that he had no idea of what use they would provide, Hans, and others. Furthermore, he had managed to trigger the hidden main storyline. He also built a mechanical suit, Viper. Viper could increase both his strength and dexterity drastically, which made up for the mechanic's weaknesses in these 2 attributes in the early stages. In Han Xiao's mind, Viper was his second battle plan, and it was only a prototype. He needed to continuously add more modules to it so as to enhance his combat abilities. Sniping was for assassination, kiting, and stealth. Viper was for head-on combat, and he actually already had a few modification ideas for it. His largest earnings were the experience and money from the 4 novice villages. Energy training technique sold very well just as he expected, and it had brought him an outrageous and unbelievable amount of rewards. 120 million EXP. Those who could afford energy training technique were the players who were rather ahead. Not everyone could afford it. The class change knowledge and basic skills were selling at a low profit margin, but the number of people who bought it was the highest. He already had 20 million EXP saved up. Thus, the accumulated experience on the interface totaled to 140 million. Han Xiao felt content as he looked at the long string of zeros. Even for the players at his level, this amount of experience was beyond their imagination. Some players could not even get as much experience during the whole version 1.0. Nice. Han Xiao was overjoyed. He would not have to worry about experience points for a long time. As long as he settled the 2 biggest obstacles, changing class and upgrading tier, his level would increase tremendously, and he could even splurge on upgrading his skills. It would be easy for him to max the levels of all his abilities except for blueprints, and most importantly, he could infuse blueprints in bulk and build up his inventory. Experience points were not the only thing. He had also earned 3,600,000 aquarium dollars by selling energy training technique, and he had sold 5 referral letters, which all totaled to $4,850,000. His wallet was packed. Worth it? Han Xiao rubbed his palms. He could not wait to open the interface. Excluding blueprints, the abilities he had yet to reach max level were, accurate shooting LV.3, special combat LV.1, stealth LV.1, steady aim LV.1, night attack LV.1, medium enhancement LV.4, energy magnetic enhancement LV.1, meticulous repairs LV.1, and the amazing pickpocketing LV.1. Without even looking at the experience points they needed, he maxed the level of each of those abilities. That's the feeling of being rich. Your accurate shooting and sniping are both at LV.5. You learned field controlling vision. Your grappling and special combat are both at LV.5. You learned lethal critical hits. You have received talent proficient combat. You have received talent proficient shooting. You have received talent bad habit.